He bled for humanity's survival, only to be twisted into a mindless puppet, a leashed hound for the Empire, brainwashed, exploited, and ultimately tossed away. Yet, the Abyss rejected his soul. He awakened not as a broken weapon, but as the golden child of the Empire's strongest duke. Now, he possesses everything he lacked: supreme status, divine talent, and burning memories of utter betrayal. The loyalist, who blindly served, is dead. Now, he will tear this treacherous empire apart. From within, flashback, a colossal shadow beast with piercing demonic eyes and razor-sharp fangs, ripped through the dimensional rift. Earth, year 2045. Desperate warriors clashed with nightmarish abominations, outmatched and dying. Crimson stained the battlefield. Vicious maws tore through human flesh and armor. Mortals stood no chance against such overwhelming, horrifying dread, collapsing in utter despair. One trembling rookie fell to his knees, accepting his grim fate. He surrendered to death as the looming beast violently launched its massive frame. Suddenly, a blinding flash of steel deflected the fatal strike, cleanly severing the demon's grotesque limb. Pitch-black blood erupted as the creature roared in pure agony, turning its wrath toward the savior. Undeterred, the hero flawlessly sliced the abomination's flesh with his peerless blade. He danced through the lethal strikes, rebounding off shattered ruins with lightning speed. His eyes burned with an unshakable confidence. Landing gracefully, he drew his sidearm with deadly precision and unleashed a furious barrage of bullets. Spinning around, he commanded the paralyzed rookie to rise, barking that survival demanded movement. This was Hansen, the legendary Supreme Commander of Earth's final defensive vanguard. The rookie screamed compliance, scrambling upright while frantically "Badave Ande," spraying bullets into the writhing swarm. For decades, mankind had been locked in a merciless bloodbath, and now, after rivers of sacrifice, only a fraction survived. Their ultimate target finally materialized. The Supreme Commander dropped low, suppressing the enemy, when an ancient, glowing array etched with cryptic runes ignited directly beneath him. Struck with absolute shock, he stared at the blazing anomaly in pure disbelief. Suddenly, his entire vision blurred, his body shattering into pixels as the spatial rift swallowed him. The rookie turned, finding only his general's abandoned weapon, and shrieked in absolute, soul-crushing terror. Across the dimensional void, an eerie voice echoed, commanding Hansen to heed its chilling whisper. He blinked through the disorientation, jaw dropping as heavy, magical chains bound his limbs. The summoning ritual had actually worked on a mortal. Thus arrived the prophesied savior from a distant realm. The veteran warrior glared at his imprisoned wrists. What was this celestial binding energy? And whose territory had he breached? A cloaked figure emerged, sneering as he declared him the otherworldly champion. Welcome to their sovereign empire. The commander scowled with mounting fury, as the arrogant noble casually demanded that he subjugate the dark forces and slay the demon emperor for their salvation. Hansen violently snapped back, demanding answers about this so-called emperor and his bizarre captivity. He had zero time for fantasy politics. His true battlefield remained in Korea. The sinister noble silenced him, extending a hand radiating with tyrannical suppression magic to force a soul-binding blood oath. Instantly, piercing celestial light engulfed the trapped hero, searing agonizing runes directly into his flesh. An explosive roar of agony tore it from his throat. The captor mockingly advised submission, claiming the cursed seal was harmless for an obedient dog. But as blinding pain consumed him, a sinister dark power awakened. Swallowing his mounting dread, he forced his trembling breaths to steady. Was this so-called politeness a trap? The elder demanded he slaughter the vile demon king to become their empire's absolute savior. Without another breath, a massive iron blade slammed at Hansen's feet. The promise? Victory might just earn him a one-way ticket back to his own realm. The room suffocated him as dozens of piercing glares locked onto his soul. Hansen hesitated, the suffocating pressure stealing his voice. Then, gritting his teeth, he declared, "Fine, I will do it." And just like that, Hansen's tragic fate as the Empire's summoned hero was sealed in blood. He became their ultimate weapon, battling relentlessly across endless, brutal battlefields. He mastered 1,000 ways to slaughter, blindly fulfilling the Empire's greedy commands. 3 years, 5 years, 10 agonizing years. His youth bled away, to obliterate Valror, the Demon King. The nightmare was over, right? For countless nights, he prayed for his long-awaited journey home. But destiny spat in his face when that same elder smirked. "Listen closely, Hansen. Your next mission." Rage blazed in Hansen's eyes. "What? That was never our deal," the old rat sneered, claiming the Empire's safety wasn't secured just because the Demon King fell. Rebels daring to oppose the Empire's grand unification must be utterly annihilated. No sparks of rebellion could remain. He just needed to erase one final obstacle. He had to crush the looming threat of the Teutonic Knights' kingdom, exterminate them, and his absolute freedom was guaranteed. Just one last massacre. Fury threatened to consume the hero, but blindingly bright runes suddenly constricted around his throat, paralyzing his entire body in an instant. A chained hound has absolutely no freedom to refuse. These bastards were toying with him. When would this hell end? Teleported straight into the heart of the Teutonic kingdom, Hansen stood over his target. Without hesitation, he silenced the rising storm, burying his blade deep into the commander's chest. Stepping back, the dying man scoffed at his own foolishness. Hansen's voice cracked. "I had no choice. Forgive me." The fallen knight, Battle, spat blood, mocking the so-called otherworldly hero. "Save your pitiful apologies, because soon they will discard you too." With that grim prophecy, Battle collapsed, motionless in a crimson puddle. Breathing heavily, Hansen stared at the carnage. It was finally finished. After all this bloodshed, his home was within reach. But suddenly, a terrifying shadow loomed behind him. Cold steel viciously pierced, straight through his spine. Hot blood erupted from Hansen's lips as a voice sneered, "Excellent work, otherworldly hero." The cruel blade jutted from his chest, freezing Hansen in agonizing disbelief. Count Brandenburg stepped forward, mockingly praising how spectacularly he had slaughtered their enemies, acting as the Empire's most obedient hunting dog. To be struck down by a revered holy knight. Fury shattered Hansen's spirit. "You treacherous hypocrites," he choked out. Every single promise had been a venomous lie. Returning home was a fairy tale. Brandenburg merely laughed. "Send you back? Why? Would we waste magic on that? A rabid dog only exists to bite." Without mercy, he violently hoisted Hansen up by the blade, only to brutally slam him back onto the cold earth, spitting a final farewell. Hansen always suspected their betrayal, yet the devastating pain of this ultimate betrayal burned into his very soul, as his vision faded in a sea of his own blood and blindingly divine light suddenly. Dark aura erupted from his back. He swore to make this cursed empire pay with absolute devastation. That fateful night, one tragic life faded away, while another soul awakened. A newborn took its first breath. The beautiful Duchess held her baby boy. Elena reached out tenderly, whispering, "My precious child, I am your mother." Beside her stood his intimidating father, staring at the infant in pure shock. He recognized that terrifying face instantly. The reincarnated protagonist suddenly remembered everything. This man was the continent's most absolute, devastatingly powerful dark mage, Duke Noir, which meant this territory was the ultimate forbidden sanctuary, the capital of dark magic, Necropolis. The legendary Black Tower stood here. His absolute trump card, the mythical Rebirth Stone, had flawlessly activated. This forbidden artifact was his only hidden ace, a legendary treasure meant to shatter his chains of betrayal, and the vessel he inherited was chosen by pure destiny. But incredibly, he was born as the supreme heir to House Noir, the Empire's absolute highest noble bloodline. He had totally hit the reincarnation jackpot this time. Once he masters supreme necromancy, he will brutally annihilate every last one of those Imperial traitors. Suddenly, Duke Noir frowned at the nanny, noting that the newborn was completely silent. The protagonist blinked in confusion, while the nervous nanny stepped closer, admitting it was bizarre. He was breathing perfectly, yet totally mute. Worried, Elena frantically asked the nanny to closely examine his frail condition. The protagonist scoffed internally. He possessed an adult soul, so shedding childish tears felt completely humiliating. The anxious nanny insisted that his vital energy was perfectly stable, meaning zero danger. The imposing duke turned to her, demanding if a silent newborn was some terrible, dark omen. The trembling nanny desperately reassured His Highness. However, if they truly, absolutely, needed to hear him cry, a light physical stimulus would work. Without hesitation, she lightly smacked his bottom, causing our reincarnator to completely freeze up, He felt utterly humiliated and furiously wanted to curse them out. Noir smirked. What a fiercely stubborn heir, Elena smiled, claiming he inherited his father's terrifying willpower. Let her try. He grumbled internally, thinking his new parents were completely overreacting idiots. As Elena gently lifted his tiny body, he braced for another strike, but she merely stroked his cheek with overwhelming, absolute tenderness. As her profound, gentle warmth seeped into his tiny soul, a forgotten memory violently resurfaced. When was the last time he felt such pure affection? The brutal years of his betrayed past life faded. The soft, trembling embrace of his beautiful new mother radiated a profound, soul-healing love hadn't felt in absolute ages. The hardened warrior, who hadn't shed a single tear since childhood, finally broke down and wept bitterly. 8 rapid years flew by since Dale was reborn into this world. Noir stared out the window, noting how crazy fast time moved. Elena completely agreed, curiously asking if young Dale was still locked inside the grand study. He hadn't looked away from those ancient texts since he was 4. Noir chuckled, claiming the boy totally took after her brilliant intellect. He was deeply fascinated by magic. Suddenly, Elena grabbed his arm with a dead serious expression. You haven't forgotten our most important, absolute promise, have you? Noir sighed deeply. You mean my solemn vow to absolutely never teach Dale the dark arts of necromancy? Elena nodded sharply. Noir smiled confidently. Of course I remember, my love, trust me. But little did she know, his shadowy birthday gift, tomorrow. But before the words left his lips, a sudden crash echoed from the hallway. Frantic knocking followed, and a trembling servant burst inside, crying out, Your Grace, young Master Dale. Yet before she could even finish, sheer terror gripped his parents' faces. They sprinted wildly toward his chambers, screaming, Dale, are you hurt? Inside, the reincarnated hero lay collapsed, an overwhelming aura of blue mana blazing around him. Exhausted, he muttered, Mother, Father. He had awakened this cultivation art himself. Dale, they gasped. Elena rushed to his side, panic-stricken. Are you injured? What was that? He whispered. I am perfectly fine, Mother. Meanwhile, Noir reached out, sensing the dense spiritual energy lingering in the room. An 8-year-old boy, already manifesting physical mana? Impossible. Dale squirmed as Elena smothered his cheeks with worried kisses. But right then, Noir's heavy voice dropped. Did he just release internal mana? The Dark Lord's tone felt dangerously sharp. The former hero froze. He had revealed too much of his cultivation. He had miscalculated his own monstrous growth rate. Sweating cold bullets, he faced his intimidating father. If he hesitated now, they would surely uncover the terrifying truth of his past life. But suddenly, Noir burst into a proud, roaring laugh. As expected, of my bloodline. He ruffled Dale's hair, sighing. Such a tragic waste that I cannot pass down my dark necromancy to you. Dale's heart plummeted. Wait, no dark magic? Then how would he slaughter his betrayers? Ignorant of his boiling bloodlust, Elena smiled, ordering the maids to clear the debris. Rest up, my sweet boy. Dale simply nodded obediently. Beside them, Noir's eyes gleamed as he plotted a legendary birthday gift. Time flashed by. A grand, extravagant gala erupted across the estate to honor Dale's 8th year of life. Elite cultivators and filthy rich nobles flooded the magnificent hall, buzzing with greedy anticipation. It was the sole heir's grand debut, after all. Refusing this invitation meant certain death. Every single aristocratic family under the fearsome Black Duke's iron-fisted rule had sworn their absolute loyalty today. A whispering lord leaned in. When does the prodigy make his entrance? Others marveled at the sheer scale of the breathtaking festival. Tension crackled in the air, but the chaotic party raged on below. Meanwhile, hidden away in a second-floor VIP chamber, our reborn protagonist sat utterly miserable, his face buried in his hands. To think these powerful figures were bowing down just for him. It was sickeningly exhausting. Back in his tragic past, he was treated like worthless trash despite saving the world. So, being worshipped as a peerless genius now made his skin crawl with paranoia. Suddenly, a sharp knock shattered his dark thoughts, but he ignored it, clenching his fists. Rage still boiled within him from destroying his desk yesterday. Just the sickening memory of his former hero comrades betraying him had caused his supreme aura to violently explode. Cursing the idiot who left that stupid hero's biography lying around, he swore vengeance again. His current vessel possessed god-tier cultivation talent. He absolutely could not abandon the dark arts. But how in the heavens could he manipulate his father into teaching him? He remembered Noir mentioning an epic birthday gift. Could he shamelessly demand forbidden necromancy magic? No, that was a fatal gamble. His door swung open. Elena gracefully stepped inside, offering a warm, apologetic smile. "Forgive my delay, my precious son." His heavy heart lightened at her gentle voice, as she wished him a joyous 8th birthday. But Dale's piercing gaze locked onto a strange, shadowy figure lingering behind her. "Mother." "Who is that?" Elena beamed, stepping aside. A cloaked girl stood there, harboring a dark secret that would shatter his fate entirely. She was the legendary elder of the Blue Tower, an absolute master of the water arts. This was the illustrious Lady Scipia, his newly appointed master. Hansen stared, completely stunned, while Scipia declared she eagerly anticipated cultivating his latent potential. Elena beamed with pride, pulling him close to whisper a joyful birthday greeting. Hansen stood entirely frozen. Had his family actually recruited a supreme blue elder to forge his destiny? This proved they strictly wanted him to master water attributes, focusing entirely on pure defense and elemental devastation. Just as he suspected, his mother was desperately blocking his dark magic inheritance. Suddenly, Scipia shifted her piercing gaze, requesting a private audience. He quickly bowed. "Yes, master." Scipia. Soon, they stepped into the freezing, snow-covered wasteland. The elf noted. He likely knew her strict orders were to teach him only water manipulation. Yet, she sensed his frustration. She knew his soul hungered for a darker path of power. He gasped in shock. "But how could you possibly know my secrets?" Scipia smirked, stating it was mere instinct to crave his father's forbidden necromancy. However, the ironclad vow binding the Black Duke's marriage was legendary across the entire empire. During his aggressive pursuit of Lady Elena, she was terrified by his demonic reputation. To win her trust, he swore his shadow legacy would never corrupt his bloodline. On their wedding day, the Black Tower elders were forced to wear pure white instead of their ominous dark cloaks. Because their union was forged on this sacred oath, practicing shadow arts now was impossible, but she promised to slowly manipulate Lady Elena's resolve. Would he accept her as his master? Hansen was floored. "Master, aren't you disgusted by the foul stench of necromancy? For a high elf bound to nature, raising the dead is an absolute abomination." Scipia merely laughed. How hypocritical. Does the Church's holy magic, which also revives the fallen, somehow count as nature's divine will? Hansen was struck speechless by this profound logic. To her, dark necromancy and holy resurrection were two sides of the same coin. His jaw practically hit the freezing ground. She defied every arrogant, narrow-minded elven stereotype he had ever known. This master was hiding true cunning. Scipia smiled sharply. "Shall we commence your cultivation?" She knew he had recently awakened a dormant mana core fragment. Their immediate objective was absolute. He must force that energy to condense into a complete first circle. His eyes widened. The first realm of power. This was the crucial stepping stone his secret grimoires demanded. He couldn't let this chance slip away. Scipia commanded him to press his palm against his racing heart and focus his spirit. "Yes, master." As he channeled his focus, a chilling truth hit him. This dimension's energy was nothing like Earth's. The atmosphere was violently suffocated with raw, untamed mana. Yet, without the bloodline of an ancient dragon, absorbing this primal energy meant instant death. He needed a functioning mana core to safely purify and devour this chaotic power. By gathering his soul's shattered energy fragments, he had to force the ring to aggressively spin around his heart. This brutal process would permanently burn arcane pathways directly into his very life force. Following Master Scipia's dangerous method, blinding blue aura erupted from his body. But as the circle stabilized, a sinister dark shadow began twisting within the light. Scipia instructed him to carefully begin rotating the mana core near his coda, heart. She warned, "This process usually takes a month, so never rush it." Suddenly, he stared at his glowing palms and turned to his master, questioning her. Instantly, she stood utterly paralyzed, struggling for words. How could a mere novice child form a stable mana circle in just a matter of minutes? Was he a heaven-defying genius born for the magical arts? Right then, the reincarnated boy released brilliant rays of aura from his fingertips, smiling as he commanded the light. Scipia stared in absolute shock. whispering, "Dale, can you try manifesting your aura through that very circle?" He smirked, agreeing to test it out immediately. Normally, projecting raw energy through a vessel is nearly impossible for beginners. But with weak power, his grand revenge against the corrupt empire was a pipe dream, let alone surpassing Duke Noir. In his past life, he survived using brutal combat magic etched into his very flesh. But this lifetime, his destiny was rewritten. This pure vessel, blessed with the supreme talent of Black Tower Lord, devoured mana like a beast. Now, he could master not just the water arts, but all elemental cultivation paths. He just needed absolute focus to guide the life force he commanded, straight down to his mortal fingertips, and manifest his will. This deadly weapon, aimed right at the Empire's throat, was a spell that rivaled absolute defense. Sepia watched in terror, knowing raw mana instantly shatters outside the body. Yet, this monster was crystallizing pure energy into a flawless, lethal ice bolt. Since his mind was entirely locked onto the shape, its destructive force should have been weak. But the reincarnated lord kept pushing his limits, violently blasting a massive oak tree. It flared with blinding, magical radiance before detonating into a million jagged splinters. As the giant trunk collapsed, Sepia spun around, her mind shattering. Cold dread washed over her entire trembling soul. He had forged an ice blade sharp enough to obliterate solid wood. This demonic level of precision was impossible for an 8-year-old child. She stared at the boy in pure horror, while Dale just waved back with a chillingly innocent smile. Sepia desperately wondered what monster wore his face. Dropping to her knees beside the ruined bark, she brushed it, whispering, "Heavens above." She assumed it was a crude aura transfer, but it was actually a true ice elemental manifestation. Sure, the tier was considered basic beginner magic, but what lunatic could unleash a strike that so perfectly and ruthlessly devoured the surrounding frost? Dale tilted his head, asking sweetly, "Master, did I do something wrong?" Sepia forced a strained smile, completely suffocated by deafening silence. The sheer complexity of that magical array was realms beyond what any innocent child could accidentally forge. This rotation, extreme acceleration, and terrifying overload combined 3 high-tier formulas. The legendary golden ratio of lethal combat arts. That he could subconsciously project and detonate such a devastating fatal spell was just mind-breaking. He blinked at his master again, while Sepia shakily waved her trembling hands, claiming it was nothing. Now she fully understood the dark truth the Duke had feared. Hours later, Sepia barged into the Grand Palace. Bowing before Duke Noir, she confessed her horrifying realization. Noir glared, his voice dropping. "What do you mean you cannot mentor the boy?" She bit her lip as Noir growled. "If he truly awakened, his first circle in mere minutes, then you are obligated to train him." She looked up with trembling eyes. "My lord," the moment young Dale awakened. He, unleashing a flawless, heaven-defying killing formation. Witnessing this, Lord Noir stood utterly paralyzed by sheer dread. How could a mere 8-year-old boy possess such terrifying destructive chi? The martial array he summoned was ruthlessly precise, calculated to the absolute divine ratio. She warned the Duke that young Master Dale harbored a monstrous aptitude for endless slaughter. Noir's brow furrowed darkly. "You claim this as an honored elder of the Azure Immortal Tower? One who forbids bloodshed? You cannot cultivate him." Sepia smirked coldly, denying his weak assumption completely. "On the contrary, this changes everything. I feel an overwhelming hunger to forge him into a supreme existence with my own 2 hands." Noir conceded that under heavenly law, he possessed 0 grounds to reject her. Smirking, Sepia exposed the Duke's hidden demonic arts. "Your heir has already devoured the very forbidden techniques he hungered to command." Noir froze, his soul completely shaken to its core. He found himself utterly speechless, while Sepia casually mocked his pathetic, tragic mortal romance. She supposedly honored the naive vows he swore to Elena. Yet, those empty promises never granted him the authority to chain his son's destiny, especially a heaven-chosen prodigy radiating such an apocalyptic potential. Meanwhile, lurking in the shadows outside, Dale strained to absorb their secret exchange, but oppressive spiritual barriers blocked every single word. Defeated, he slumped against the cold floorboards, his mind racing. They must be plotting my fate. I never expected my initial awakening strike to unleash such absolute ruin. That immortal Tower Master appeared thoroughly rattled. Moving forward, he desperately needed to conceal his heaven-defying aura. Suddenly, right at that very second, a towering figure approached. Young Lord Dale, recognizing the man, the reborn protagonist's eyes blazed with fierce recognition. "Martial Uncle Helmet!" he cried out. Helmet smirked, his battle-hardened face softening. "What are you plotting out here?" Dale immediately demanded, to know exactly where he had vanished to. Flashing a bloody grin, Helmet revealed his absence was spent slaughtering enemies for their noble clan's survival. He scooped the boy into a hug, boasting about eradicating several nightmarish demonic beasts. Tossing the young heir high into the air like a mere toy, he laughed aloud. But Dale pressed deeper. "You raided a hidden abyss, correct?" A shadow of bitter guilt crossed the boy's mind. In this treacherous immortal realm, the sudden eruption of an abyss or a plague of demonic beasts spelled absolute catastrophe for any reigning sect. Back when the supreme demonic sovereign drew breath, hellish creatures massacred countless mortals, staining the lands red. Thus, the elite cultivators of every great bloodline swore to purge unsealed domains within the fallen sovereign's cursed empire, mercilessly executing any beasts crawling through dimensional rifts. However, the current crisis, drowning the Saxon duchy, is exponentially more lethal than anywhere else in this broken world, and it was entirely his own karmic fault. After his past incarnation was slaughtered, the righteous champion eradicated the demonic sovereign. Following that betrayal, Duke Noir was commanded to purify the demon's rotting wasteland into imperial holy ground by slaughtering every last creature dwelling inside. Cultivators ruthlessly termed this burning the corrupted roots. Dale quietly begged Martial Uncle Helmet to preserve his own life. The veteran chuckled darkly. "Are you truly fretting over my survival, little lord?" Suddenly, heavy footsteps shattered the peace. A chilling voice echoed, "It appears you've returned in one piece." Both heads whipped around to face Duke Noir stepping inside. Helmet immediately bowed to the imposing Duke. Noir coldly acknowledged his bloody sacrifices during the harrowing Reese Abyss subjugation. Then, Lady Elena glided through the doorway, her voice echoing, "Is everyone assembling without me?" Dale panicked internally. Why was his mother intervening now? Elena locked eyes with him, whispering his name with eerie reverence. Gliding dangerously close, she smiled a terrifyingly proud smile. "I heard you shattered the first immortal realm, but little did he know," beaming with pride. Noir nodded slowly. "Impressive." Elena suddenly turned around, urging the young prodigy to demand any reward from his father right now. Dale hesitated. If he demanded the dark arts of necromancy, would they suspect his true identity? What would a normal kid even want? Smirking inwardly, he declared he wanted a baby sister. His parents immediately turned bright red, totally flustered by this innocent request. Coughing awkwardly, his dad promised to try. Dale simply smiled. "Thank you, father." Nearby, Commander Helmet smirked darkly, while a nervous subordinate begged the captain to calm down. Soon, midnight draped the palace in an eerie, glowing, silver moonlight. Reverting to Hansen, he collapsed in bed. Faking this childish innocence was absolute torture. His tiny body was completely drained, a brutal side effect of forcing advanced cultivation magic. As sleep finally claimed him, a violent nightmare from his past life struck hard. The traitorous Brandenburg appeared, sneering that he was thrilled to see him suffering. It had been ages since their last bloody encounter, hadn't it? "Humans are such pathetic hypocrites," the Phantom mocked. "It is so easy to grow horribly weak, right?" He taunted Hansen for enjoying this fake, cozy family and playing house. Was he getting too comfortable? Had he completely forgotten his sworn revenge? "The Empire is hunting you, Hansen," the spectral enemy roared. "They will track you until your last breath, until every single trace of your soul is erased from the plane. Mortal realm!" Hansen violently gasped awake. A blinding, chaotic light violently erupted from his trembling chest. Choking for air, he gripped his heart, feeling a catastrophic surge of energy threatening to explode. A suffocating, murderous aura leaked out. Curse, the merciless Empire. Driven by pure instinct, he staggered out, realizing his enemies would never stop hunting him. Dragging his feverish body into the freezing night without a coat, he desperately sought the chilling wind to cool his boiling cultivation base. But the agony only multiplied. Collapsing into the snow, his meridians screaming in pain, he was suddenly intercepted by Teacher Sepia in the dark woods. "You are in critical condition," she observed sharply. completely stunned by her sudden appearance. The boy whipped around. Teacher Sepia? Her eyes narrowed as she analyzed his aura. A violent mana. Deviation? What terrifying talent. Yet, a chilling sense of absolute dread washed over her spine. Wasting no time, she slammed her glowing palm onto his chest, forcing her chi inside. If pure malice hijacked this boy's immortal core, the devastation would be unstoppable. As her sealing spell activated, Hansen watched the overwhelming killing intent vanish instantly. She whispered his true name, leaving him utterly shocked. What? A cultivator's aura mirrors their darkest soul, Sepia explained. That is why every immortal's path is entirely unique. Your specific spiritual talent is deeply rooted in absolute slaughter, an incredibly terrifying curse. Revealing a hidden artifact from her robes, she presented a heavy grimoire. Because of this deadly fate, it is extremely fortunate that I will be your master. She shoved the forbidden text into his hands. Teacher, Hansen gasped. It was an ancient, legendary tome of dark necromancy. Sepia smirked, declaring that the heavens had bound their chaotic destinies together forever. With a warm smile, she wished him a happy birthday. Overwhelmed with emotion, Hansen fiercely hugged his new master, burying his face in gratitude. But internally, she worried about his dark future. Days later, under the blazing sun of the northern plains, Sepia stood beside Hansen. Staring at demonic beasts, he muttered, "Rabbits?" She smirked. "Yes. Time for your first blood." As Hansen summoned a deadly soul-reaping seal, a terrifying shadow eclipsed the sun. "Yes, master," he declared, locking onto the helpless beast. A blinding surge of energy obliterated the creature with jagged crystal shards. The entire training ground erupted, glowing with violent, brilliant sparks. Master Sepia watched closely, realizing that even while claiming a soul, his hands remained perfectly still. "Hansen," she began, "even when casting the exact same technique, the endless power shifts between cultivators. Do you understand the true reason behind this?" "No. Tell me," he replied. Sepia revealed that at its core, a warrior's aura acts as a flawless mirror, exposing their true nature completely. It forces whatever hides inside their soul into physical reality through spiritual energy. Therefore, their power ultimately uncovers the hidden landscape of a cultivator's very being. Hansen absorbed her profound words in silence. Sepia pressed on, explaining that basic concepts like flame barriers are mere stepping stones to force your mind's evolution, allowing an expert to solidify their inner domain. The sacred techniques hoarded in the immortal towers are no doubt different at all. The Crimson Tower enforces absolute order through overwhelming dominance. The Azure Tower demands balance through perfect harmony. The ancient philosophy guiding every single faction is forged directly into their combat arts. These supreme ideologies worshipped by the great towers construct the very foundation of their cultivation paths. Beyond the legendary Crimson and Azure factions, the terrifying Obsidian, Ivory, and Emerald sects also hold immense power. After lecturing, a heavy sigh escaped her lips, leaving Hansen suspicious. Sepia confessed that she truly believed this dark path was premature for him. The lowest foundation of necromancy is corpse, awakening. This forbidden art reanimates the dead, binding them as puppets with absolute spiritual threads. Hansen channeled his entire soul into the fallen beast to forcefully resurrect it. The skull, spine, and joints snapped together. Lacing his dark energy through its broken bones, he flawlessly ripped the creature back from the afterlife. Sepia praised his terrifying talent, asking if he dared move onto the next grueling trial immediately. "Yes, master," he swore. Cold aura manifested into frozen armor, while his eyes burned with an overwhelming mystical ferocity. The second his palm struck the earth, a devastating wave of spiritual force erupted outward at the speed of light. A brilliant blast completely engulfed the armored undead beast. Against all odds, he had forged a flawless ice defense, molded perfectly to the creature's frame. Smirking, she challenged him, offering to shatter his proud defenses. Hansen's entire body tensed, and in the blink of an eye, she launched a merciless strike. The frost cracked under the devastating impact, but incredibly, it still shielded the fragile beast. Hansen's heart pounded with triumph as his defense absorbed her brutal attack. Master Sepia acknowledged his flawless execution, yet noticed a burning ambition lingering just behind his eyes, desperate to break free. Hansen boldly declared, "Yes, master, I demand you." Instruct me in the absolute pinnacle of the water arts." Her warm smile vanished instantly. "Never," she rejected coldly. Shock shattered him. "What?" he gasped. Sepia calmly explained that his recent stunt was nothing but pathetic, elementary water manipulation. But like all profound cultivation paths, the aquatic arts demand soul-deep enlightenment and an impossibly high level of mastery as a warrior evolves. Most trash-tier novices bleed just trying to grasp a single element. Dominating two opposing forces simultaneously creates a legendary dual cultivator. At your pathetic age, it is absolutely impossible. To me, your insane greed will only lead to your utter destruction. His jaw clenched in bitter disbelief. Greed? After everything I have bled for? After all, his terrifying potential, she still looked down on him. Fury rising, Hansen confronted her, snarling that she promised they would conquer this brutal path to immortality together. Yet now you betray me at the first hurdle. Sepia darkened her gaze, turning her back abruptly. Your training is finished, she dismissed him. But late that night, hidden in the shadows, he stormed the ancient archives, gathering forbidden cultivation manuals. There was nothing he couldn't conquer alone. His overwhelming talent would leave her no choice but to accept him. As he devoured the profound arcane texts, a blazing pink aura erupted around his body. The next morning, wandering into the monster woods with Sepia, exhaustion hit him hard from endless midnight cultivation. Sepia noticed his fatigue, asking if his spirit was all right. He clearly hadn't rested. He smirked, claiming he was just refining something. Sepia warned him about cultivation deviation. Extending his palm, he confidently whispered, "Watch this, master." Instantly, a terrifying dark magic seal manifested from his hand, trapping the beast entirely. Sepia beamed, stunned that he had flawlessly mastered the technique. But suddenly, the boy ruthlessly shattered his own barrier, detonating the frost aura. Sepia froze in absolute shock. What in the world just happened? Was that it? A piercing violet light erupted from within, the beast tearing its soul apart. And a split second later, a massive, magical shockwave decimated the forest. Sepia stood completely paralyzed by the overwhelming destruction, finally understanding his terrifying power. Glowing bone shards rained down as she stared in awe at Dale. He smirked. Corpse detonation and frost blast. He fused the pure essence of water and deadly darkness. Could this kid actually be a legendary dual cultivator? Standing there, he channeled supreme water, energy in his left hand, and sinister dark aura in his right, grinning like a demon. Glancing at the completely annihilated beast in the distance, she realized this brutal combat art was entirely unheard of. Fused with the frost, detonation of the ice armor, the deadly corpse blast decimated a massive radius. But his massacre didn't end there. With bone and ice tearing like blades, this dark technique was forged solely for absolute slaughter. It was the kind of ruthlessness seen only in battle-hardened warlords. What kind of twisted darkness lurked inside this boy's mind? Just then, Hansen glanced across the ruined woods and spotted his powerful uncle. His eyes lit up as Helmut raised his hand, shouting, "Young master? Lady Sepia?" Hansen eagerly asked if he had just survived. Another deadly dungeon raid. Helmut, towering on his warhorse, proudly replied that this time they slaughtered a fierce demonic horde. The legendary Black Cavalry had survived relentless bloodshed. Armed with supreme aura-coated spears, the Black Cavalry stood as the absolute strongest force of the Saxony Duchy. Even more terrifying, their elite commander, Captain Helmut, was one of the continent's 7 legendary swordmasters. He surely hadn't forgotten his promise to pass down his martial arts. Hansen desperately dreamed of awakening his sword aura under such an elite master. This was a fateful opportunity to level up. Helmut chuckled deeply and roared, "Never!" Hansen waved back with a smirk. "See you soon, Uncle Helmut." The knight nodded, urging for him to flee this cursed forest. "The frostbite aura is dangerous here. Protect yourself." After parting ways, Sepia urged Hansen to retreat to the royal estate. He nodded. "Understood, master." Under the blood moon, the boy's terrifying potential shifted the scales, forcing his teacher to confront his mother, Elena. She demanded, "What did? You mean Lady Sepia?" Sepia solemnly declared that the horrifying truth was exactly as she feared. Young Master Dale had completely mastered his first realm of forbidden necromancy. Noir tried to hide it, since they only requested water magic. But his dark revenge was just beginning. Magic. Sepia verified this truth, casting her eyes downward. She confessed that, despite this, as his master, she yearned to pass down every profound art he craved. Just as, she warned before, the young Lord Dale hungered for power far beyond mere water. Techniques. A heavy silence fell. Elena's voice trembled slightly, begging if she could please continue guiding his aquatic cultivation. Sepia nodded firmly. Absolutely. From this day forward, I shall oversee his entire path. His parents bowed deeply in gratitude, and Sepia exited the plane chamber. Yet before vanishing, she gravely apologized for shattering her solemn vow. Elena gasped, realizing their son was a heaven-defying anomaly. Wasn't he? A dual-core cultivator at the tender age of 8 was practically unheard of. Though his terrifying potential sends shivers down her spine, he's destined for greatness. As their own flesh and blood. Noir faced Elena, eyes clouded with dread, confessing he must teach Dale the forbidden death arts. He dropped his head in sudden shame, his towering presence shattering. He desperately wanted to grant their boy the strength to crush any future betrayals, ensuring he becomes an unrivaled lord and peerless sovereign. As his bloodline protector, he needed him to inherit this dark legacy. Gripping his skull, he begged his wife for forgiveness. Elena sighed, noting the mortal realm's absolute terror regarding soul manipulation. The weak-minded masses scorn it, branding the art as cursed, death magic. She wanted to forbid it, yet urged him to teach the boy until he ascends into a death monarch powerful enough to crush society's pathetic judgment underfoot. Her voice softened with fierce devotion, embracing Noir tightly while gently tracing his cheek. Pulling him into the shadows, she whispered her final approval. Noir froze, breathless, for a second, before his aura blazed back to life. Understood, Elena. Embracing her, Noir swore upon his very soul to forge their son into an immortal god of death. Thus, the grueling descent into the abyssal death arts commenced. Noir coldly declared his utter disappointment in Dale. The boy was resurrecting souls blindly, entirely oblivious to the karmic threads binding them. Hansen gritted his teeth. This basic trash was exactly what his previous master had instilled in him. He was trapped, deep within a concealed, subterranean vault beneath Duke Noir's estate. The atmosphere shifted. The moment he displayed those pathetic foundational spells, his father sighed heavily and dragged him down into the darkness. Noir's voice turned lethal, demanding that during this brutal cultivation, he must never dare manifest such garbage-level magic again. Their true training would violently commence with memorizing the entire anatomical structure of every mortal being. Was that crystal clear? Hansen's mind reeled, but he firmly replied, "Yes, father." The ancient tomes Noir violently slammed down required agonizing memorization, containing forbidden anatomical secrets meant only for supreme Grandmaster healers. Hours bled away until Noir forcefully snapped the grimoire shut, proclaiming his foundational chi was stabilized. The boy was finally permitted to attempt true soul manifestation. The real nightmare was about to begin. Hansen swallowed hard, nodding, understood. Suddenly, his eyes widened in sheer shock as Noir slammed a slaughtered goblin onto the altar. Hansen gasped internally. "Is that actually a vile monster's corpse?" Noir scoffed, chuckling darkly. A trash-tier cultivator might barely force a Grandmaster swordsman's body to shamble mindlessly. However, in the hands of absolute power, even a worthless foot soldier evolves into a terrifying death knight. Right now, this is mere fodder. Prove to me you can dominate its soul. Hansen's blood ran cold. Trembling, he extended his aura-infused hand, realizing that unlike some feeble beast, this creature held a vengeful soul, but lurking within its lifeless eyes. Controlling this two-legged beast was a nightmare. It demanded complex mana threads just to function. He needed to strike now, but maneuvering it felt like dragging a heavy, rusted marionette. Every muscle in his body coiled tight. He forced his dormant spiritual energy to awaken. Was it a fatal error? Using such ruthless dark arts just to forge an unbreakable shield. The beast's joints were paralyzed. He was completely locked down. What was his next move? Panic crept in. Just then, a heavy, mountain-like presence settled behind him. Noir gripped his shoulder. "Listen closely, Dale," he murmured. Fortifying a corpse by forcing extreme rigor mortis might seem clever, but true power demands sacrifice. You are completely shattering its natural mobility. Hansen stared in absolute shock. The profound weight of those dark cultivation words hit him hard. "Observe," Noir commanded, his voice dripping with authority. Dark aura instantly erupted from his palms, shooting straight toward the goblin's lifeless shell. Hansen's breath caught in his throat as he locked onto every single mystical shift. Pitch-black mana greedily swallowed the monstrous goblin whole. A mortal ribcage exists only to shield weak, beating organs, Noir explained, his dark eyes glowing. But the dead have no pulse to protect. You must see past the illusion of life. Tear apart its mortal design and reforge it into an immortal weapon. Han trembled slightly, utterly blown away by this ruthless logic. This, Noir smirked, is the absolute zenith of necromancy. The fundamental truth of the dark arts. Desperate for more power, he looked his father in the eye. Teach me the core philosophy of the Dark Tower, he demanded. Noir offered a knowing smile. Do you truly seek the abyss? He whispered. Absolute truth only blooms in the soil of death. To grasp immortality, one must first crush the fragile, agonizing burden of living. Noir embraced his son tightly. The boy stared back, his eyes burning with dark ambition. Suddenly, a violent memory ripped through his mind. Fragments of his blood-soaked past incarnation surfaced. He saw a traitor kneeling in the mud, weeping for a mercy that would never come. The protagonist's blade gleamed with cold vengeance. Please, spare me, the worm sobbed pitifully. Then, a crimson fountain erupted as the head rolled. Nausea hit him hard. Noir called out, Are you losing your focus? You look pale. Cold sweat drenched Hansen's terrified face. Shaking off the dread, he forced a steady breath. I am perfectly fine, he lied through his teeth. But past life shadows clung to his soul. As Dale's terrifying magical potential rapidly awakened, whispers of Duke Noir passing down forbidden arts ignited the entire empire like wildfire. The Duke had shattered his sacred vows. The imperial factions erupted into sheer, unprecedented chaos. By daring to defy the heavens, this oathbreaker painted a massive target on his own back. Millions watched his every move. Meanwhile, Hansen pushed his brutal cultivation to the absolute brink. Weeks of hellish practice later, he stood upon the Grand Duchy's dust-choked martial arena, exchanging fierce blows with his uncle. Helmut stared at the young monster, completely stunned by his relentless, demonic work ethic. The spar violently escalated, wooden blades clashed like thunder. Suddenly, an explosive aura manifested before the protagonist's eyes. He instinctively dodged back. In a fraction of a second, a devastating flash split the air. The shockwave separated them instantly. Helmut blinked in pure disbelief as he realized his trusted weapon had been blasted from his grip. A fierce grin stretched across his face. Incredible strike, young master. Hansen scoffed softly. A knight never loses his blade. You dropped your guard on purpose, didn't you? Helmut chuckled darkly. Absolutely not. I struck with lethal martial intent. A normal cultivator would have their souls shattered in a single exchange. This was an actual death match. Hansen tightened his grip around the vibrating hilt. Observing his flawless stance, Helmut's eyes gleamed. Your blade mastery is truly terrifying, he praised. I am convinced you are secretly a mage, because mages need knights as meat shields. But little did they know, a vengeful shadow had just breached the gates. Why push his mortal limits? Why cultivate so ruthlessly? He doesn't need to shatter his core like this. Hansen extended his scarred hand and smirked. I must grow stronger. A duke's heir cannot survive this treacherous world. Hiding behind guards or pathetic defensive spells, right? Plus, how could I? Misstealing martial arts directly from one of the continent's 7 legendary sword masters. Helmut smirked, his booming voice echoing that this was an epic answer. With a bloodline like yours, I'd die without regrets. Hansen chuckled, knowing he had finally earned the master's rare respect. Suddenly, at that exact moment, Elena graced the courtyard, her elegant dress rustling. She noted they both blanker and looked fired up. The warriors turned, and Hansen quickly asked what dragged her into the biting cold. With a warm smile, she replied she wanted to witness her son's fierce cultivation, carrying fateful news for him. Intrigued, he asked, What is it? Elena's eyes sparkled. Did he recall the birthday wish he desperately pleaded for? Hansen's mind raced, a sudden realization hitting him. Let her remind him of his vow. That's right, he had prayed for a little sister. At that revelation, he froze in sheer shock. Elena beamed, knowing he would swear to protect his future sister with his life. Cradling her swollen belly, she revealed her pregnancy. Overjoyed, Hansen vowed, I will defend her. 10 months later, fate delivered a fragile princess into their noble clan. Isn't she utterly perfect? Dale rested on the bed, beside his mother, whispering, Yes, absolute perfection. He still couldn't fathom that he now had a blood sister. She was devastatingly precious. Reaching out to gently touch her face, he hesitated, prompting Elena to ask, "Do you want to hold her?" Startled, he gasped, "Me?" Elena urged him to drop his warrior's guard and bravely embrace the tiny baby in his placid, trembling arms. He carefully secured her, and Noara noted that once he finally held her close, the fear melted away. "So, what are your thoughts?" she asked. "She shares your aura, doesn't she?" Hansen cradled his vulnerable sister, completely, speechless and overwhelmed. Elena softly murmured how strangely magical this was. She usually wailed for anyone else, but instantly calmed in his protective grip. She seemed incredibly at peace. Dale smiled, gazing at her innocent face, before his parents suddenly asked how he felt. "She's light as a feather," he whispered. Hansen noted that despite her weight, her existence was heavy. Noir smiled, declaring this was true life's meaning. He must never forget this profound bond, but peace never lasts. Wasn't it time for his cultivation? Surely, Master Sepia was already waiting. Moments later, Hansen stepped into the freezing, desolate, snowy forest. Sepia's eyes gleamed coldly. Today's lesson was brutal, life-or-death combat. He tightened his grip. "Should I go all out?" Sepia coldly commanded him not to. "Hold back," demanding he strike with lethal intent. "Understood, Master," he replied, instantly igniting his magical core. Sepia smirked, eager to witness his newly cultivated power. In a flash, a deadly ice shard rocketed straight for her skull. She dodged effortlessly, scoffing that his opening move was pathetically sluggish. Instantly, he launched a savage follow-up attack, but Sepia mocked him with brazen arrogance. A weak disciple shows his master mercy. She crushed the deadly shard barehanded, and Hansen realized he had to unleash absolute devastation. But suddenly, Sepia roared, "Absolute barrier!" Panic struck his core as an overwhelming aura exploded. He knew this murderous impact would shatter his soul if left unblocked. As the smoke cleared, Sepia was stunned. He manifested ice armor so fast, but hidden nearby, a traitor watched. She was mesmerized. His frost armor shattered, but Sepia demanded another round. Hansen slammed his palm into the earth. "Molecular fusion," he chanted. "Absolute zero barrier. Rise." Instantly, a massive aura erupted, forging an impenetrable glacial shield around him. Sepia was completely speechless. Casting a high-tier defense mid-battle? By refining his internal mana core, he had multiplied the frost's density to terrifying new heights. Sepia stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "Why raise a shield right now? Is he exhausted from my strike?" Suddenly, she spun around, sensing a lethal shift. The young cultivator was channeling an ice blast, a deadly fragmentation art. With absolute confidence, a blinding white light erupted right in her face. Reality hit her like a truck. It was a frost bomb. She shielded her eyes as Hansen smirked. It worked. He had forcefully compressed the massive glacial barrier to its absolute limit, triggering a devastating explosion. Because his icy ki was already hyper-condensed, the blast became a lethal, explosive art. "Try dodging this one, Master." As the dense smoke finally settled, Hansen stared blankly. Sepia was gone. "Master?" Panic gripped his heart as he desperately screamed her name. Suddenly, stepping seamlessly out of the shadows, Sepia teased. "Looking for me?" he gasped, admitting she terrified him. Then it was a flawless phantom step. She smirked, praising his insanely destructive technique. To think a mere first circle cultivator could actually draw blood from a magic tower elder. Horrified, he swore he never meant to harm his master. But Sepia merely smiled, genuinely thankful for the vicious scratch he managed to land. "Wait, what?" he stammered. She gently explained, "You trusted my strength enough to go all out. As your mentor, my pride is immeasurable." His eyes widened. "Do you really mean it?" "Absolutely," she beamed. "You are a prodigy. But how did you engineer such a ruthless battle art?" Rubbing his neck sheepishly, he laughed, crediting her flawless teachings. Sepia lowered her gaze, a deep, knowing smile playing on her lips. Soon after, the scene shifted to Noir's dim office. Her warm smile had completely vanished. Noir's cold eyes locked onto her. "Who marked your face?" he demanded. She brushed it off as mere carelessness. While training the young master, his lethal precision was undeniable. Noir sighed, claiming he was forever indebted to her. Sepia sharply dismissed the notion. calling it an absolute honor to cultivate such terrifying potential. Noir's tone darkened as he asked for another grave favor. Anything, she replied. Noir revealed chilling news. A savage orc horde had breached the mountains, invading their sacred lands. Though a vanguard unit could easily slaughter them, he harbored a darker motive. He was sending Dale straight into the bloodshed. Sepia's blood ran cold. The boy isn't ready for war, she protested. Noir coldly countered that frontline combat wasn't the ultimate goal here, but bearing the weight of House Noir's legacy was absolute. He abruptly stood, unleashing a suffocating, pitch-black aura. As the sole heir, Dale must taste the bitter reality of duty. Trembling under the pressure, Sepia asked, "Then, what is my role?" Noir's eyes glinted. "Give him my artifact." And he needed absolute control. But this ancient power remained utterly untamed. A true relic pulses with immense, willful demonic energy. Activating it demands a heavy toll of spiritual mana, or your very lifeblood. The more devastating the relic, the more chaotic and lethal its backlash. It could easily shatter a weak mind entirely. Noir gravely explained that House Saxe had conquered these dark arts for generations. Right now, they stood before the legendary Saxe ancestral vault. Noir turned to Dale, declaring that as the true heir, he must arm himself for the impending bloodbath. Dale, trembling with shock, stammered, "A real war." Deep down, he thought. Finally, Noir nodded sharply. Dale was joining the vanguard to slaughter orcs. But first, he must master the sinister darkness coursing through their cursed bloodline. They stepped into a sealed sanctuary, where ancient, forbidden treasures lay, dormant. Dale scanned the shadowed room, gasping in sheer awe. Noir revealed these were forged by the Demon King himself, captured when their fierce ancestors crushed the demonic realm. He warned never to mistake these for pathetic mortal weapons. The young master shivered at the monstrous spiritual pressure suffocating the room. Noir nodded. These cursed items were lethally unstable. Until Dale achieved true mastery, he must not touch a single thing. But right then, Dale zoned out, completely hypnotized by a strange, dark calling. Noir blinked. "Dale, where did you wander off to?" But the boy had already drifted, and toward a sinister corner. He desperately craved a weapon for his vengeance. Whispers echoed from the shadows. It knew about the traitors he despised. It tasted his burning hatred, offering a bloody pact of mutual slaughter. "Pick me," they hissed. The demonic relics shrieked in his mind, violently fighting to be his chosen blade. Dale realized these corrupted souls were feeding on his inner fury. Yet, it felt too weak. He demanded absolute, heaven-defying power. Suddenly, a mysterious midnight black cloak caught his eye. "What is this?" he gasped. It was the legendary Phantom Shadow Cloak. Once worn by Duke Bertha, a supreme demonic warlord from the ancient era, it could literally morph flesh into intangible shadows, creating an absolutely invincible phantom warrior. Driven by sheer obsession, Dale instantly threw it on. Noir and Master Sepia screamed in terror. As Dale slowly turned around, an explosive, suffocating wave of pure, pitch-black demonic aura violently swallowed him whole. The abyss roared, hungry. The fatal trial had finally begun. This wasn't mere darkness. Ancient masters used it to conjure apocalyptic shadow storms, bending boulder/Baali, the void like a living, breathing beast. But to wield such godlike might, the host must brutally crush the shadow spirit's will. Survival wasn't guaranteed. Dale stared at his trembling hands. The abyssal energy surged uncontrollably, trapping him inside a vortex of raging, malevolent magic. The two elders watched in absolute horror. Noir grabbed his hair, completely paralyzed by panic. "This is extremely bad," Sepia yelled. Noir gritted his teeth, warning that if this escalated, Dale's soul would be devoured by the savage shadow beast. "Devoured!" Sepia gasped. They had to strike now. Noir roared that they must rip the cloak off him by brute force. But suddenly, a terrifying gale erupted. A blinding, divine light scorched the eyes of both his master and his father. The ancient array shattered, instantly teleporting Dale back into the grand chamber. Noir demanded answers. Smiling calmly, Dale bowed. "I am unharmed, father." Sepia rushed forward, desperately checking his pulse for any internal damage. "You terrified me," she cried out. He smirked, brushing off the chaotic energy. It was merely a scratch. Noir stared in absolute disbelief. How could a mere child conquer such a legendary, soul-devouring artifact? Hansen locked eyes with his father, his ambition burning bright. Speak, Noir commanded. Hansen smirked. I want to claim the other immortal relics, too. The adults froze, utterly paralyzed by his arrogance. Defeated, Noir finally granted him permission. Bowing respectfully, Hansen began his ruthless plunder of the family's sacred treasure vault. He absorbed their ancient spiritual energy for 24 grueling hours. Days later, within the Grand Training Pavilion, Helmut stared at the young master's new gear. Is that the legendary shadow cloak? He asked. The boy smirked with a dark grin. Indeed, it is. Helmut rubbed his neck, clearly sweating, warning him that the demonic artifact notoriously devoured its owner's souls. Was he crazy? Hansen chuckled coldly. Aside from a slight demonic sting in my meridians, I'm perfectly fine. Helmut gasped in awe at his monstrous talent. Hansen then joked that the ancient relic had just been painfully lonely inside the dark vault. It recognized my dominant aura immediately. It simply wanted to serve a true master. Helmut erupted into nervous laughter. Calling a cursed, lethal treasure lonely? You are insane! Hansen ignored the praise, his eyes narrowing with a deadly request. Helmut gulped, asking what he needed. The teen demanded a brutal, all-out sparring match. He needed a living target to test his cultivation. Helmut proudly thumped his chest. I accept your challenge. I promise to push your immortal foundations to their absolute limits. Hansen mentally calculated the risks of battling one of the continent's legendary masters. Helmut's crushing aura was suffocating, yet thrilling. Reading his hesitation, the veteran knight promised to suppress his terrifying cultivation base and rely purely on basic mortal swordplay. No spiritual pressure. Hansen smirked inwardly. Was his uncle showing him mercy? But true warriors never hold back that weakness leads to ultimate betrayal and tragic death. His real objective wasn't mere victory, but unlocking the hidden potential of his new demonic cloak. If he could manifest supreme weapons from pure darkness, his path to immortality was guaranteed. This duel was the ultimate trial by combat. Suddenly, Hansen summoned a terrifying dark blade and launched a relentless, bloodthirsty assault. Helmut desperately parried the devastating strikes, sweat pouring down his face in pure shock. The boy's raw physical power was defying the laws of the heavens. It was absolutely monstrous. Helmut grinned ferociously, roaring that the real warm-up was over. Now, it was his turn to strike. As Helmut unleashed a devastating counterattack, Hansen vanished like a ghost. Panicking, the veteran master scanned the empty arena, totally outplayed. The boy's evasion technique was terrifyingly perfect. Yet, a lethal surge of explosive energy suddenly cornered Hansen. Shadows crawled toward him to consume his life, but he effortlessly channeled his immortal core, violently shattering the deadly rays into dust. Helmut stood completely paralyzed, his jaw dropping as he realized his nephew had casually crushed a fatal strike. That blow was designed to shatter mortal weapons into dust. Such was the devastating gap between ordinary steel and a legendary immortal relic. 10 more rounds, Helmut roared wildly, but lurking within the shifting shadows. The duel's aftermath left the spectator knights whispering in absolute shock. Not a single warrior there had survived 2 strikes against Captain Helmut. An insurmountable wall of power now separated them from Dale. He merely tilted his head, questioning their stunned silence. Days later, before the perilous deployment, Elena desperately sought out the Duke. She refused to send her precious son into a demonic death trap. Hansen gently reassured her, placing his full trust in his father's person and protection. But Elena trembled. What if absolute tragedy strikes you? Hansen's eyes darkened with resolve. He looked back, declaring his desperate need to cultivate immortal strength. He had to be ready to inherit the duchy. When the fateful time comes, ultimate power would be required to shield his family, especially Liz. This brutal, bloody trial was his only path to leveling up. He desperately craved absolute power to defend them. Defeated, Elena tearfully whispered, "Go then, my son." Hansen mounted his spirit beast, promising a swift return. They would reach the forward camp by dawn. Soon, the vanguard announced their forces were primed for war. Noir smirked, turning his sharp gaze toward Dale. He commanded him to give the march order. Dale blinked in pure shock, asking, "Me?" Noir declared that Dale was destined to lead the legendary Black Cavalry. Hansen watched in gut-wrenching horror. These forces belonged to Dale, not him. The bitter taste of betrayal stung deeply as Dale prepared for his first command. Yes, the hierarchy had shifted. Dale confidently faced the armed ranks, roaring that their moment of bloody vengeance had arrived. For the absolute pride of the Saxony, The loyal warriors bellowed back. Yes, young lord, he commanded the battle formation. This deadly operation deployed 250 elite cavalry in the White Mountains, legendary Winter Guard. Their prey was a massive horde of 1,000 savage orcs. The monsters had breached the peaks, fleeing upstream to escape the freezing starvation. Once they moved downstream, the knights would execute ruthless hit-and-run tactics, baiting them into a fatal ambush. There was only one way for 250 men to cross the deep waters. Sepia manifested a breathtaking bridge of pure frost. Hansen smiled, deeply moved to see his pacifist master. She had abandoned her peaceful cultivation principles just to ensure his survival. Despite her endless pursuit of harmony, she stood by him on the place. Battlefield. The icy path is forged, Sepia announced. She prayed for his triumphant victory. Noir bowed deeply in gratitude, while Dale shot her a confident smirk. I'm off, master. Sepia watched his retreating back, her heart heavy with an ominous dread she couldn't explain. It felt strange for a master to fear for her invincible student. Suddenly, the Winter Guard phantoms unleashed a devastating sneak attack on the temporary camp. Blazing spiritual arrows rained from the heavens, completely annihilating the unsuspecting front line. The entire battlefield erupted into a merciless blazing inferno, burning the ogres to ash. As monster, shrieks echoed into the night. Helmet drew his blade and ruthlessly roared. Battalions 1, 2, and 3. Awaken your auras and charge now. The ground quaked. As they launched a flawless wedge formation, Helmet smirked at Hansen. Your orders, young master? But as Hansen calculated the demonic horse speed of 2 strikes per second, a terrifying, murderous shadow descended from the sky. The real nightmare had just begun. Charging at 40 kilometers per hour, the massive weight of these elite cultivators and their heavy soul armor created a devastating impact. When their 3 to 4 meter spears are locked into the deadly piercing formation, amplified by the martial aura, not even beast-tier orcs could survive. Hansen sneered, thinking this massacre was an absolute slaughter, and Noir coldly agreed. This charge was the ultimate strike of the cavalry, the absolute pride of their sect. Yet Helmet warned them not to drop their guard. Young Master Dale, this bloodbath was just starting. The battle raged on. Giant ogres pushed forward with massive spiked shields. Helmet calculated. Their deadly ambush was successful, but the beasts survived. The sect would tactically fall back, regroup their forces, and crush them with overlapping martial arts. Suddenly, a blazing blue flare pierced the heavens. A vanguard disciple screamed out the brand, signal to fall back. All cultivators retreat. As the sudden withdrawal began, the demonic orcs stood utterly confused. They unleashed furious roars, blinded to the shifting tides of war, before violently hurling giant spears at the retreating humans. One spirit beast was brutally impaled, shrieking in pure agony. A loyal knight plummeted from his dying mount. Watching from afar, Dale pitied the doomed warrior. Noir casually reported a casualty. Hansen's eyes widened in absolute shock. Were they really abandoning a comrade? The honored sword of House Saxe was left defenseless before the monstrous horde. Hansen snapped his head back, demanding why everyone just watched. Noir and Helmet shared a cold look. Hansen realized any rescue attempt would arrive too late. From this immense distance, one would need to shatter the beast's demonic hide in a single strike. Orc skin was heavily armored, meaning Dale had to instantly evolve his frost bullet cultivation art. Evolving. The rune with a deadly piercing array was absolutely critical, adding a perfect trajectory matrix for total stability. He had to forcefully elevate the spell's tier of mastery. In a flash, he unleashed a mutated frost bullet, infused with profound energy, blasting it toward the fallen warrior. Seeing the foral monster completely obliterated, Noir gasped at the unbelievable display. Helmet marveled at the insane range and godly precision. He gasped, "Young, Master Dale, where are you going?" Dale surged forward to intervene. Noir urged him to stay back, but Helmet realized the truth. To forge a brand new cultivation rune at his young age was terrifying. Harnessing that much destructive power meant Dale's spiritual core was reaching absolute perfection. Dale's eyes narrowed as the deadly horde began swarming again. 2 fatal flaws remained. First, the knight was paralyzed by pure terror. Second, his advanced rune chant was way too slow for real combat. He needed to strip away the useless steps. He had to refine his own martial art. Calling it a 98 caliber frost blast was too wordy. Something quick and simple, he decided. Frost bullet. Instantly, the terrified cultivator whirled around, only to see a blinding streak of energy obliterate the charging ogre. Into bloody mist, the stunned disciple stammered, "Young Master Dale, why risk your life? For a lowly guard like me?" Dale stepped calmly through the bloody carnage, declaring that House Saxe never betrays its loyal blades. As Dale gently pressed a hand on his chest, a deafening roar shook the earth. Two massive demonic beasts lunged from the shadows, eyes burning with vengeance. Dale calmly raised his hand and awakened his shadow blade arts, but as apocalyptic dark energy consumed the battlefield, smashing beast after beast effortlessly, Dale smirked coldly and commanded, "Annihilate them." The towering behemoth roared back furiously, but his devastating demonic energy completely consumed its flesh entirely. As the gruesome head of the very final beast hit the blood-soaked earth, the last surviving monster stood paralyzed in shock, an absolute terror. Gazing at its comrade's shattered remains, Dale mocked, "Still breathing?" Instantly, a lethal, piercing frost projectile materialized as he coldly declared, "This slaughter completely finished." The battered soldier looked at the young lord, stunned, whispering that his legs were paralyzed. Dale smiled warmly, declaring their absolute victory. He hoisted the trembling soldier up. "We survived," he said, passing the remaining bloodshed to Uncle Helmet. Pulling the warrior to safety, Commander Helmet roared out, "Vanguard, advance! Strike them down for House Saxon and our noble young heir." The armored legion surged forward like a tidal wave. Back at the Saxon fortress, heavily armed sentries quickly surrounded the Supreme Commander's imposing war pavilion. Inside, Noir confronted Dale. "The slaughter is complete," he stated, his voice dangerously low. "But answer me this now. Why plunge straight into the jaws of absolute death? Entirely alone? Such suicidal arrogance." Dale stood completely frozen, utterly baffled by this scolding, an unexpected hostility instead of praise. His father's suffocating aura demanded an immediate reason for his reckless vanguard assault. The main character clenched his fists tightly. "Listen, father." He locked eyes with him intensely. "The loyal Saxon vanguard are my future subjects. Protecting my cultivators is the sacred duty of a leader." Noir sneered, dismissing his naive righteousness as foolishness. Tension spiked as Dale glared back, silently raging. "You built this house on absolute loyalty. Why act so completely heartless? Now?" His expression darkened. "Should I ask why you watched our loyal men bleed out, father?" Noir rose, unleashing a terrifying, mountain-like pressure. "The demonic sovereign's northern wasteland constantly tests our mighty bloodline with endless savage abyssal monstrosities. Warriors surviving this brutal hellscape cannot ever wield their blades, expecting a miraculous rescue." The main character countered, "Yet you expected me to abandon a dying hero." Noir's gaze turned razor-sharp. "By swooping in like a savior, you poison their survival instincts. A warrior relying on salvation will inevitably perish on the battlefield. Weakness breeds undeniable death." He marched menacingly closer. "How many weak, dependent fools really can outlast the demonic horde? Our vanguard must endlessly temper their mortal souls through absolute despair. Only when their mortal limits are entirely and utterly shattered shall the Lord step in. That is the ruthless burden of our bloodline." Dale fell silent, struck by the heavy, brutal truth. The cold logic of this dog-eat-dog cultivation world was truly undeniable. A forgotten lesson from his past immortal life, carelessly ignored until now. Noir's heavy hand suddenly gripped the main character's shoulder firmly. "However, your fierce, unbreakable, defiant killing intent today was magnificent. Never let that proud, arrogant spirit be crushed." Bowing slightly, Dale accepted the harsh lesson. Noir threw back heavy war tent flaps, signaling their victorious return. By dusk, the epic legend of ruthless young heir, fearlessly plunging into an abyssal horde for one single fallen warrior, ignited the entire empire. Street urchins cheered loudly from the bustling rooftops, screaming tales of the noble boy who decimated an army of 1,000. Demonic beasts entirely alone. Though wildly exaggerated, the legendary rumor spread like inextinguishable hellfire. While the young lord despised the excessive spotlight, this surging, newfound fame awakened something ancient and sinister, watching him closely from the darkest shadows. Days later, battle cries shook the sect's courtyard. The young master finally arrived. "Master Dale," the elite disciples bowed low. "An honor to witness your power." Dale rubbed his neck. He hated this flashy mortal reverence. Helmet grinned proudly. Stand tall, young master. He pumped his fist to the heavens. To protect our young master's immortal path, we must break our limits. Understood? Yes, sir, Dale smiled. Their cultivation was progressing. Eva rushed over. Master, the fallen Orhart clan has arrived. Dale nodded. Helmet muttered. Time to face our destiny? They prepared to meet the remnants of martial legends. The legendary divine sword, Patriarch Bedel, once a lord of Teutonia, betrayed during the sect wars. When the Dark Empire attacked, the sword and his clan were utterly annihilated. Nearing the Grand Hall doors, Dale noticed Helmet's aura darken with grim memories. Remembering the man who scarred him, tension hung heavy. Stepping inside, Noir smiled. Cultivating hard today, my son? Always, father, Dale bowed. The head steward announced. The esteemed guests await. They were escorted inward. 2 lone women entered. Dale sensed their hidden spiritual energy. Traveling unguarded took sheer courage. The mother bowed. Vanessa. Orhart greets the Grand Duke. Dale offered a nod. And this is my heir, Charlotte. The fiery girl sneered with pure defiance. Mother, why bow? She stepped up, glaring at their hosts with sheer hatred. Silence, Vanessa panicked, but Noir calmly waved it off. The journey was harsh, he noted. Dale, escort our guest through the sect grounds. Dale politely agreed. Offering his hand, he asked, Shall we, Lady Charlotte? Smack! She struck his hand away. Filthy imperial dog. Dale blinked in shock. The hall fell dead silent. Shameless traitors, Charlotte spat. Vanessa shrieked, demanding she beg for forgiveness immediately. Charlotte clicked her tongue, bolting out. Dale chased after her. The heavy doors slammed. Vanessa wept, begging for mercy. Forgive her insolence. A recent trauma shattered her spirit. Elena gasped in horror. What nightmare befell you? Vanessa trembled. The corrupted Holy Knight, Count Brandenburg, seized our ancestral lands. The realm's so-called champion, known darkly as the King of Pigs in the demonic underworld. To breed ultimate demonic heirs, he relentlessly hunts down pure-blooded cultivators. He targeted my innocent, underage daughter. She narrowly dodged his vile grasp by seconds, but that lingering terror deeply scarred her soul. Alina wept, but outside, a sinister shadow finally moved. Hearing this, Noir's brow furrowed deeply. Vanessa pleaded to shield her, but as a disgraced noble, her cultivation is too weak. She desperately begged them to accept her, his daughter, into the Sax clan, just so that vile man could never touch her again. Just then, our main character caught up, asking, Lady Charlotte, does she even realize where she is heading? Charlotte coldly replied, She does not care. Dale pondered. Why the martial training grounds? Well, he assumed she was the heir of a knight. Charlotte coldly asked if his hand was healed. He replied, Everything is perfectly fine. Do not worry. Charlotte then gripped her spirit sword and muttered, Good. Dale observed her, thinking, Her eyes are completely red from crying. Is the trauma of that betrayal still haunting her? Despite her absolute frosty demeanor, she is still just a kid. Charlotte drew her gleaming blade, declaring, In that case, we are dueling right now. Dale of the Sax clan prepared his weapon. He sighed, wondering why this spoiled girl just did whatever she wanted. Charlotte demanded a fight. He calmly replied, he needed a real reason first. Charlotte revealed she heard legendary rumors about an unrivaled young master who slaughtered 1,000 demon beasts alone to rescue a fallen cultivator. He smirked and introduced himself properly. Charlotte vowed to crush him, the so-called invincible genius, to prove to the entire cultivation realm that her martial arts were absolutely superior. Then everyone would finally acknowledge her power to protect her shattered sect from that demon. He questioned her target. Charlotte spat out, Count Brandenburg, the divine paladin. Dale stared in utter shock, biting his lip as his blood boiled. He could never forget that imperial dog who mercilessly betrayed him. To think that cursed name would echo here of all places. Since their ultimate revenge aligns, she might be a useful pawn. But first, this arrogant girl needs a harsh reality check. He casually turned away, leaving her utterly confused. Then, he snatched a wooden training sword, mocking, You are merely a weak child who knows absolutely nothing. Charlotte froze in anger before he spun back around, daring to her to strike with her complete killing intent. Charlotte roared that she was already planning to end him. Gripping her massive blade, she exploded forward like lightning. Dale effortlessly deflected her strike. but she unleashed a relentless barrage. He noticed she countered perfectly, redirecting his force with subtle wrist flicks while leaking a terrifying, spiritual aura. She used chi to wield a rapier far exceeding her tiny frame. Just as a supreme sorcerer refines mana within their magical core, a true martial warrior cultivates pure aura to transcend mortal limits. This fiery girl was truly a combat prodigy. Charlotte smirked fiercely, instantly erupting with violent spiritual energy that engulfed her sword before charging. He widened his eyes, barely blocking her devastating blow. She rejoiced internally, though realizing his cultivation level still held the absolute advantage. Since birth, her legendary father was already gone from this mortal realm. Yet nightly, her grieving mother whispered heroic tales of his legacy. She was destined to defend their honor as the proud heir of the divine sword sect. Even when their mighty empire fell into ruins and tragedy struck, her immortal blade never faltered. So why? Why? Can this random boy easily block her path? Glaring at him, she panicked. Something is terribly wrong, Charlotte roared, recklessly driving her chi-infused blade forward. Suddenly, she gasped in absolute horror as he violently shattered her stance. But I am the heir of the divine sword. Her shattered weapon violently pierced the earth, as Charlotte plummeted helplessly toward the person. Clenching the earth, she begged to know why she lost. He replied, because you aren't the immortal blade. Your ancestral pride is justified, but with your weak foundation, you can never defend your sect from that traitor. His martial aura is overwhelmingly, vastly superior to yours. Hearing this devastating truth, Charlotte wept bitterly as she met his gaze. Desperate, she cried, then how do I cultivate? Rising unsteadily, she begged for guidance. Dale answered firmly, I, Dale of the Sax clan, vow upon my bloodline to guard the Orhart legacy. Stunned by this profound oath, Charlotte gasped as he declared, until you level up and shatter your limits too. Claim vengeance yourself. My clan will be your ultimate shield. With a swift motion, he yanked her fallen blade from the earth, offering it back. Confused, she asked why. He smirked, because your martial spirit remains unbroken. Swear your absolute loyalty. Become a plank. Lethal weapon for the Sax clan. Wiping her tears, her aura shifted as she smiled fiercely. How could I reject destiny? Kneeling in deep submission, she grasped the brazen armor's arc's hilt, vowing, I, Charlotte Orhart, pledge my immortal soul today. It sounded like mere words, but her blazing spiritual energy transformed it into an unbreakable blood oath. Later, inside the Patriarch's grand spiritual hall, Noir revealed Charlotte had voluntarily bound herself as a servant to their sect. Surprisingly, she submitted without a single protest. Suspicious, he questioned if a secret pact occurred between them. Dale confessed, we forged a sacred destiny, Father. I pledged our clan's absolute protection over the Orhart lineage. Narrowing his sharp eyes, Noir growled, you didn't offer our prestigious name out of pathetic pity, right? Dale countered, never, Father. Pressing further, Noir demanded his true motive. Smirking, Dale revealed, she is the sole inheritor of the immortal blade. Her cultivation potential is terrifying. We formed a blood pact. I desire an unrivaled divine weapon forged exclusively for our sect's ultimate supremacy. Stunned by this ruthless ambition, Noir suddenly grinned maliciously and agreed. Dale schemed silently. The final heir to the Heavenly Sword legacy is now my pawn. That treacherous fool Brandenburg just lost his greatest prize. Meanwhile, within the sprawling imperial capital, a wrathful roar shattered the serene atmosphere. Total chaos. That arrogant brat dared to intercept my destiny. A trembling disciple bowed, begging, forgive this lowly servant. Enraged, Brandenburg obliterated his jade table, screaming at their incompetence. They failed to capture a mere child, the disciple stammered. Our elite shadow killers were slaughtered before breaching the Sax territory. We suspect the Orhart girl unleashed her dormant power. Brandenburg's face twisted in pure disgust at his worthless underlings. Exhaling deeply, he stroked his mystical scabbard. Recalling the glorious bloodbaths of the past, he unsheathed his sacred weapon, murmuring, are we ready? My immortal blade Dandel, my gorgeous bride, must wait just a fraction longer. I will secure the absolute perfect vessel to inherit this supreme artifact. No matter the bloody cost, he commanded them to hire the dark underworld, flooding the rival sect's lands with mercenaries. Shocked, the disciple hesitated, But Brandenburg roared, "Pay them any spiritual stones they demand. Drag that wretched, unfortunate girl directly to me." 7 full days passed since Charlotte locked her fateful cultivation. Oath. Embedded within the enemy's walls, she endured hellish martial, conditioning and clashed against Dale daily to forcibly break her limits. Soon, an elder named Helmet questioned, "Are our forces prepared?" Dale smirked darkly. "Absolutely." Charlotte gripped her blade, but lurking in the shadows, a devastating ambush awaited. Steel violently clashed. Dale swiftly evaded, unleashing a fierce counterattack. Charlotte desperately attempted a desperate retaliation. Watching in pure awe, Helmet questioned if this bloodshed was merely a spar between youths. They lacked a true knight's aura, yet their sheer bloodlust and terrifying agility were mind-blowing. He observed Dale rapidly, shadow stepping across the arena. Dale stared, utterly shocked by Charlotte, who ruthlessly unleashed her blade to strike. Helmet effortlessly intercepted their deadly collision, declaring, "That is magnificent technique. You fought fiercely, Lady Charlotte." She scoffed, demanding he skip those meaningless flatteries. "Where is my fatal flaw, Sir Helmet?" she demanded. "My lady, do you understand a rapier's soul?" Charlotte scoffed. "A lethal thrust, right?" Helmet smirked. "Wrong. The ultimate truth resides entirely within your footwork. While young Master Dale evaded your strike, he ruthlessly invaded your personal space. At that exact split second, you should have retreated, hunting for a fatal blind spot. Overextending your striking arm only caused your desperate blade to tremble violently, making your attack completely useless. You must entirely forge your combat foundations anew from absolute nothingness." Charlotte aggressively glared. "Are you insulting me?" Helmet sighed. He observed this critical weakness forever. Her battle stance and movements were terribly sloppy and absurd. Charlotte defensively crossed her trembling arms and bitterly scoffed. Obviously, she lacked a legitimate combat master before this moment. Helmet smirked. Now that he arrived, he would brutally discipline her chaotic swordsmanship. Charlotte's face burned with furious embarrassment and yelled, "My sword style is weird?" Helmet chuckled, patting her head. "I am merely testing your resolve, my lady." Her flustered expression was irresistibly amusing. Dale intensely scrutinized them, questioning how terrifyingly fast she would evolve beneath the absolute mastery of Sir Helmet, a legendary continent-ruling sword monarch. If Dale didn't aggressively cultivate his own strength, her awakened potential would inevitably crush him. Forging an immortal mana ring requires ruthless precision. First, he commanded the violent surge of spiritual energy swirling within his core, dominating its chaotic storm until perfectly tranquil, then engraving that supreme heavenly pattern directly into his soul. However, this heavenly cultivation usually demands decades. Scipia gasped, demanding if he actually manifested his second divine ring. Dale smirked. "Indeed, Master. In this cruel realm, spiritual output is calculated by cyclic rotations. An ordinary first-tier cultivator barely manages 300 weak spiritual cycles per minute. Shockingly, his primary divine ring's velocity already hits 2,000 revolutions per minute, whereas his newly awakened second spiritual core spins at roughly 400 cycles per minute. Ascending to another tier requires 300 explosive rotations minimum, signifying he had already effortlessly shattered the impossible limit required for a third divine ring. Having conquered this realm, Dale desperately needed to test his terrifying new strength. He decided to evolve his pathetic basic frost projectile. He relentlessly condensed its atomic structure, multiplying its devastating density and absolute lethality. Next, he conjured a massive magical cannon barrel to exponentially amplify the spin velocity, forging an armor-shattering glacier strike. He blasted raging aura forward, thinking, "What absolute madness is this? Was manifesting such world-breaking destruction always this effortless? It seems the terrifying power of an extra cultivation ring is godlike." Scipia grinned wickedly. "A monstrous genius, as always." Dale bowed slightly. "This divine power belongs entirely to you, Master. My loyalty remains absolute forever." Scipia observed his glowing aura, pondering deeply. From surviving that brutal demonic monster raid to guiding Charlotte, his righteous power grows. But a venomous betrayal awaits him tonight. Despite the terror, his potential demands absolute faith. Suddenly, she crushed him in a hug. "My glorious disciple!" Dale flushed red, completely overwhelmed. Personal space doesn't exist for her, does it? Later, Within the Grand Ducal estate, Dale crossed his arms tightly. That woman is terrifying, he muttered. Am I just an infant to her? He shook his head. Focus. I must refine my immortal cultivation now. Activating his core, he summoned a glacial barrier. Then, a 12-gauge frost blast ricocheted fiercely right back at him. Instantly, he conjured a spiritual shield, blocking the deadly shards. I must perfect this art, he vowed. Suddenly, a soft voice shattered his focus. Dale? Turning, he found Charlotte watching his aura. Is this your secret training ground? He nodded. You're cultivating too? She smiled, explaining her intense martial footwork drills from Master Helmet. You really crave the blade? Dale noted. Charlotte hesitated. Yes. Regarding my previous shameful behavior. Dale raised an eyebrow as she bowed deeply in remorse. I disrespected your status, she confessed, her pride completely swallowed. Forgive me, young master. Dale smirked. You were incredibly arrogant. Charlotte gasped, eyes wide with shock, before his gentle smile returned. But I'll overlook it today. Her face brightened. Truly? Yes. Drop the stiff titles. Charlotte beamed with newfound warmth. Understood. Later, resting beneath an ancient spiritual tree, Charlotte sighed. This domain's energy is perfect. I can practice sword arts until midnight, and the spiritual breeze restores my core. Dale observed her radiant spirit. I understand entirely. Finding another soul devoted to cultivation actually warmed his hardened heart. Above, Elena watched the young warriors from her balcony. The heavens move quickly. Our boy is growing so strong. Noir squeezed her shoulder gently. Don't their destinies seem perfectly aligned? Elena narrowed her eyes. We must guard their path. Noir chuckled, believing fate was already sealed. Elena insisted a mother must fiercely guide her son's cultivation of power and true matters of the heart. Soon after, near the duchy's outer boundaries, a frail elder praised Elena's mercy. She smiled warmly. It is my duty. Please maintain your life force, Dale observed, noting the desolate outer slums. The forgotten realms of beggars and wandering souls. Here, his noble mother dispensed spiritual charity, providing crucial alms every single week, restoring their dignity. Now, both he and Charlotte were joining this mission. Suddenly, a panicked child appeared. Charlotte knelt down. What is wrong? The crying boy clung to her desperately. Please, my mother's life is in mortal danger. Dale's instincts flared sharply as the boy screamed for salvation. Following them, Dale's aura darkened. This reeks of a deadly trap. Leaving their guards behind, they plunged into a treacherous maze of shadows. Targeting Charlotte instead of the guards? The betrayal was too obvious. Dale sensed killing intent. Glancing up, he spotted a lurking assassin, a shadow operative from the Thieves' Guild. The corrupt holy warrior sent him. Vengeance fueled his core. They wanted Charlotte dead, the boy whispered. Just one. Second, I will bring mother back. Charlotte nodded. Okay. Suddenly, a rogue cultivator stepped from the alley shadows, smirking. Heavens above, what are such delicate lambs doing wandering around? This treacherous outer sect territory? Charlotte's eyes widened as she realized they were completely ambushed. The bandit sneered. Our blood feud is only with the little miss standing beside you. Scram quietly, young master. If you dare to play the hero, things will get bloody. The main character smirked coldly. I, Dale of the Grand Sax clan, swear upon my cultivation to protect Orhart's heir from absolute trash. The rogue laughed. Your arrogant noble pride is almost touching. However, you clearly fail to understand the grim reality of this brutal world. It seems I must personally carve a painful lesson into your fragile bones. Trembling with fear, Charlotte whispered frantically. Dale, I left my spirit sword, he reassured her gently. Stay back. Internally, he rejoiced. This was the flawless moment to test his newly cultivated shadow cloak technique, disguised as pure self-defense. The demonic thugs lunged forward with murderous intent, but Dale calmly stepped into the fray. A thug gasped. A sudden gale? Dale vanished. The leader shrieked, in sheer panic. Dodge his strike, you fools. Dale locked eyes with him, analyzing everything. So, this rat was an upper-tier rogue cultivator. Without hesitation, Dale explosively channeled his forbidden dark spiritual energy. The bandit shrieked in horror. A terrifying shadow technique, Dale awakened after breaking through to the second immortal realm. By manifesting pure, parasitic darkness, these shadows hunted automatically to devour undead souls. The terrified thug was blasted away, screaming in agony. Their leader's face twisted furiously. What demonic art is this? Dale transmuted the fallen thug into a monstrous puppet that wailed bitterly, so hungry, so utterly famished. Another bandit recoiled in absolute terror. He raised a corpse. The leader roared. Stop! Playing around! Just slaughter him! Gripping his weapon, the leader sneered. Sax clan, heir or not, this arrogant brat would perish under a single strike of his martial blade. He dashed forward, confident that in these narrow streets, absolutely nobody could withstand his aura-infused, lethal assassination arts. He unleashed a barrage of flying daggers, but Dale effortlessly deflected every single one. The leader panicked. What a monster. Leaping high, he swung his broadsword, but Dale summoned his supreme dual-barreled artifact, loading 12-gauge, thunderous buckshot. The explosive blast obliterated the leader's spiritual defenses. Charlotte watched the absolute carnage unfold from the shadows, whispering in awe. Dale, stepping cautiously into the open, she witnessed the shadow beast devouring the remaining thugs, while their defeated leader knelt helplessly before the main character. Dale exhaled cold breath. To survive such a devastating divine artifact blast, aura cultivators truly possessed terrifying resilience. Coughing blood, the leader roared. I'm not finished. He lunged for a final treacherous suicide strike, but instantly, his head was violently severed. The parasitic abomination tore through the survivors, screeching madly into the night. Must feed, consume. Dale turned his chilling gaze back. Charlotte, are you unharmed? Collapsing to her trembling knees, she gasped. Yes, a dying bandit shrieked, so the main character readied a frost-piercing bullet. He begged for mercy. Swiping his hand, Dale commanded his monstrous shadow to retreat. He slowly approached the bleeding survivor on the cobblestone. The man sobbed uncontrollably. I'll confess everything. I'll reveal the masterminds. Dale stared down with hollow, merciless eyes, demanding the entire truth. The thug swore his ultimate loyalty. So, the main character ruthlessly executed him, sighing coldly that he didn't care about pathetic secrets. Charlotte scanned the bloody alleyway. Dale murmured, This is the terrifying might of the Sax bloodline. It will endlessly shield you from betrayal. Standing amidst this carnage, does my darkness frighten you? Charlotte trembled. A little, but little did they know, a deadlier nightmare watched from above. After his legendary oath that fateful day, her resolve hardened. If his noble sect became her ultimate shield, she swore to forge herself into the invincible blade that slaughters his enemies. She owed him her entire destiny. Charlotte vowed to shatter her limits. The truth behind Dale taking her in was a crushing guilt over the Cerbidel massacre 24 years ago. When Dale offered his hand, her soul smiled. This meant Charlotte's vow to become his weapon carried a heavenly weight, far beyond what Dale ever realized. Meanwhile, inside Count Brandenburg's lavish estate, pure venom twisted his face. A living nightmare, he cursed. Staring at the severed head boxed before him, he read the blood-soaked letter. It mockingly acknowledged the burden of travel, yet forcefully summoned the Count to the absolute domain of Sax. It demanded his immediate presence, warning him not to defy this fate. This was Duke Noir calling for bloody accountability. Even a revered holy sword cultivator dared not reject it. Just days. Later inside the Sax stronghold, Noir's voice dripped with dark sarcasm, praising him for his swift arrival. He never expected such an obedient little dog. Please, excuse this pathetic welcome. Brandenburg forced a laugh, masking his terror. What matters more than the Dark Duke? He ground his teeth, thinking, these arrogant bastards. Aloud, he mentioned that after the recent chaos, massive panic was choking the Empire, especially that brazen daylight kidnapping attempt. Noir's gaze turned cold as death. Sweating, Brandenburg quickly claimed he knew exactly why he was dragged here. But surely, as the Emperor's most loyal blade, he was innocent of such treacherous garbage, right? Noir merely raised a hand, unleashing a suffocating wave of dark mana. It crashed into the knights. They panicked, screaming about the unnatural wind. Their very bodies began rotting away, begging the heavens for mercy. Brandenburg froze in absolute terror. Even his elite holy order was entirely powerless against this. The forbidden art, storm of oblivion. Brandenburg shrieked like a coward. Noir's aura exploded. Kneel, you fake holy warrior! Trembling with humiliated rage, the Count screamed. Does the Duke understand? The insane treason he is committing. Noir simply commanded him to listen. This was his one and only warning. Brandenburg's mind shattered. A total monster. He knew the Duke was ruthless, but this level of demonic power was unimaginable. Noir whispered that today was an act of mercy, but if the Count ever dared target the heirs of Saxe again, he would personally erase the entire Brandenburg bloodline from the mortal realm. He ordered him to engrave this absolute truth into his soul. The journey was long, so why not stay and taste true hellfire? Brandenburg choked out his pathetic gratitude for the Duke's generosity, lying that urgent matters prevented him from staying a second longer. Noir flashed a devilish smirk. I understand completely. Then, he darkly prayed. The Count's retreat would be free of sudden death. Watching from the shadows, Dale realized this brutal domination over the Emperor's supreme lapdog was the ultimate spark. It would ignite a catastrophic war across the Empire, a single ember of vengeance, ready to consume the world in flames. But lurking in the shadows, a true nightmare awakens. The righteous saint. If the martial world discovered this holy warrior was forced to bow before the demonic Duke, the entire mortal realm would tremble. Inside the Patriarch's study, Lady Sepia gasped in pure shock. Noir simply smirked, replying, "These are the remains of the shadow assassins who dared attack Dale." Every single drop of blood was spilled by Dale alone. Bodies ripped to absolute shreds, chests punctured, with organs spilling across the floor. For the first time, the Saintess doubted her own divine path. Were her righteous teachings completely flawed? Noir coldly explained that guiding his son's terrifying martial talent would require immense wisdom. Therefore, he formally offered Lady Sepia the esteemed position of head mentor. Sepia realized he wanted her to be more than just a temporary guide. He was locking her into the demonic house of Saxe. Noir admitted Dale relied heavily upon her holy aura, as his own dark energy could not nurture the boy. With her righteous support, his destiny would shift. The Saintess agreed, accepting the burden. Comprehending this monstrous prodigy's worldview was now her ultimate mission. Seasons passed, and the young master's 10th Foundation Day finally arrived. Unlike previous years, elite envoys from the Heavenly Imperial Court descended upon the estate. Among the Vipers stood a particularly hated figure. Dale maintained his composure, stating, "Welcome, Lord Julius." The elder smirked maliciously, replying, "The absolute honor is mine, young master." Whispers echoed throughout the grand hall. By the heavens, just look at this spiritual feast, totally fitting for the Saxe clan. A young disciple gasped. What a breathtaking display. Hard to believe we are exiled in the frozen northern wastelands. A noble girl giggled in agreement, feeling foolish for ever doubting the Duke's wealth simply because they were far from the central capital. These central nobles formed the Emperor's divine faction, the most tyrannical and overpowering alliance within the entire mortal realm. Their presence at this banquet was incredibly obvious. It was a vicious, hidden warning, a threat from the royal bloodline that they would never let the Saintess's humiliation slide. And the cruel messenger chosen for this petty revenge stood directly in front of our hero. Julius sneered. So this boy must be the famous Dale. What an absolute thrill to finally meet you. The Crimson Lord Julius ruled the Red Tower, a monster seeking hellfire, fury, and ultimate cultivation. His demonic mages were terrifyingly infamous for believing that absolute power dictates absolute justice, and during the previous era, they never hesitated to slaughter for their dark ambitions. In his past life, Dale was brutally tortured in their bloodline modification experiments deep within that very tower. Julius continued, "A peerless genius of House Saxe. I heard you possess an unrivaled spiritual root, totally unmatched in the entire empire. Legends say that while guarding your knights, you utterly decimated an entire beast horde at merely 9 years old. Truly, a supreme talent." Our main character bowed, hiding his blazing murderous intent. Wishing the elder a pleasant evening, he escaped to the spiritual garden, thinking these fake political banquets always drained his cultivation energy. Honestly, he desperately wanted to spar with Charlotte right now, but she was undercover as a simple maid. Plus, if the martial sex discovered that the Divine Sword's heir was secretly training with him, her life would be forfeit. But lurking in the shadows, perhaps solitary blade cultivation was best. Suddenly, a blood-curdling shriek shattered the silent courtyard. His aura froze instantly. Someone dared to strike here? Dale whipped around, eyes narrowing. That terrified wail. Could it really be her? He dashed forward, spotting young Eva. Tears streamed down her bruised face. "Please, have mercy," she sobbed. "I serve House Sax." The attacker lunged like a wild beast, mocking her. "A lowly servant dare speak back? You invoke the Duke's sacred name?" He drew a cold blade. "The entire estate is distracted, feasting for the young master's birthday. Why waste tonight guarding an empty courtyard, when I could claim you instead? Struggle against me again, and I will mercilessly slit your delicate throat. Now submit." Suddenly, the main character roared out, blazing with absolute irritation, unforgivable trash. "Do you court death?" The corrupt official froze in primal terror. "Young master," Eva wept in relief. "Young Master Dale." His footsteps echoed with immense, killing intent. "Explain your treason." The scumbag sneered back. "Has the sheltered boy ever tasted romance? A naive brat like you? I highly doubt you understand the ways of men. Let me educate you." He maliciously grabbed the trembling maid by her fragile neck. The steel kissed her skin. "Watch how a real man claims his rightful prize." The main character raised his palm calmly. "Fear not, Eva. This garbage dies today." In an empire chained by strict noble hierarchy, no one expected a boy's explosive retaliation. Yet Dale struck with lightning speed. Petro crashed violently into the cold stone floor. Spitting blood, the envoy scowled. He refused to yield. Defying imperial blood was utter suicide. Striking the emperor's dog was absolute madness. Petro staggered upward, venom in his dark eyes. "Have you lost your mind, Dale?" he bellowed. The main character coldly commanded. "Kneel!" "What did you just say?" Petro gasped. "Are you deaf?" "I said bow your head, beg for Eva's forgiveness immediately. She is a loyal retainer of the Sax bloodline. She falls under my family's ultimate protection." Petro gritted his teeth. "This arrogant brat." "Listen closely, young Master Dale. I stand before you as the Emperor's imperial proxy. Striking me to protect some worthless peasant girl? You are openly defying the glorious crown. Your actions are absolute treason against His Majesty." Dale's eyes flashed with murderous intent. "Tell me, imperial dog, does the Emperor truly enjoy abusing innocent noble house servants? For mere entertainment?" Petro choked on his rage. "How dare you utter such absolute blasphemy?" Noir, Elena, and Julius suddenly materialized from the shadows. "This is your final warning," the main character warned. Julius chuckled darkly. "Well now, what a fascinating power struggle. Dale, what is the meaning of this madness?" Noir demanded. "He targeted our people. This beast tried to ravage a servant of House Sax." Noir gasped in absolute horror. "And for a maid, you struck Lord Petro?" "Yes, your grace," Petro desperately cried out. "The boy has gone completely insane." Dale thrust his hand forward, unleashing his terrifying aura. "Who gave you permission to stand? These esteemed emissaries from the grand imperial capital carry the supreme burden of representing the Emperor's divine will. And yet, this trash attempted to violate a helpless maid. He thoroughly drags His Majesty's glorious reputation through the absolute mud. Therefore, I could never blindly ignore Lord Petro's utterly disgraceful sins. Such heresy demands fierce punishment." Julius erupted into chilling laughter. "What a brilliantly sharp little viper. The boy speaks pure facts. Who could ever imagine our noble imperial proxy would stoop so pathetically low, targeting a defenseless peasant?" Petro's face drained completely. "Lord Julius, wait!" Blazing, catastrophic mana suddenly erupted around Julius. He raised his hand. "Incinerate this filthy, treacherous insect." Petro scrambled backward, eyes wide with horror, shrieking desperately. "Farewell, scum." A devastating inferno blasted forward, engulfing Petro. But amidst the roaring flames, "Agony!" Julius screamed, his voice cracking. The absolute agony. Their twisted words were, "Dead on. My heavenly mandate is to crush those parasitic worms disrespecting the imperial bloodline. May he achieve glorious slaughter." With young Master Dale safe, the suffocating tension finally broke. The imperial dogs retreated, leaving House Sax in temporary lucro-matters. Tranquility. As dawn broke, Eva stepped into the shadow-lit chamber, young. "Lord, morning has arrived." Dale rubbed his heavy eyes, offering a low grunt. He quietly thanked her. Flustered, Eva quickly bowed. "Please, don't say such things," Dale asked, if something troubled her mind. Eva whispered, "Thank you truly. It is a monumental privilege for a lowly servant to stand by your side." Dale studied her intensely, sensing the unspoken fears she buried. Having experienced the cruelty of 2 separate lifetimes, this raw devotion still felt utterly alien. He needed to adapt, and quickly. He offered a warm smile, dismissing her. As the heir to the Saxe bloodline, he fully grasped the heavy burden of his title. He would exploit this power, whatever the cost, to obliterate the empire. Later, Noir broke the heavy silence. "You're brilliant, Dale, but your recent aura feels dangerously different. What changed?" Dale let the tension build, then finally spoke. If the legendary otherworldly hero hadn't truly perished clashing with the divine blade, his karmic path would inevitably lead straight to the Saxe territory. Noir's eyes widened in pure, unadulterated shock. "That is dangerous treason, boy. Where did you unearth such a terrifying theory?" Dale's gaze turned cold. "Simple logic. In my past life's hidden memories, I knew the Imperial Court was weaving a deadly trap for us. The Empire ultimately discarded their heroic pawn. The cowardly royals feared the day their supreme hunting dog would snap its chain and devour the throne." Dale revealed the grim reality. The hero vanquished the demonic overlord, yet the Imperial forces deliberately refused to cleanse the lingering demonic corruption. Instead, they passed a sickeningly twisted decree. We were forced to swallow cursed wastelands, expanding Imperial borders while they ruthlessly bled our family dry. They masked this execution as a royal gift. As long as the abyssal shadows stain our soil, our people are condemned to an eternity of endless slaughter. Noir swallowed hard. Dale's aura darkened further. Worse still, everyone inside the royal capital and across the frozen north now brands our Saxe bloodline as a demonic cult. Just as they threw away their savior, they are preparing to butcher us, their greatest internal threat, to secure their corrupt reign. Noir's voice trembled. "Wait, the royals backstabbed the Heavens Chosen? How do you know this?" Dale smirked. "These are just strategic deductions pieced together from forbidden archives. But the dark logic is undeniably flawless. History claims the legendary champion embraced a glorious end after his cataclysmic clash with the Holy Blade. Noir realized his own cold sweat was entirely justified. Only the highest echelons of cultivators knew the bloody truth behind the hero's demise." Dale's eyes gleamed ruthlessly. "If my visions are true, the Empire is nothing but a parasitic tyrant swallowing weaker realms through sheer violence." Noir stared at Dale, trembling at the boy's monstrous intellect. "Then, young master," he gulped, "what is your path forward for our doomed house?" Dale's spiritual pressure suddenly spiked. "The Saxe bloodline can never share the same sky as those Imperial dogs. We will annihilate the Empire." Noir's jaw dropped, a chilling fear crawling up his spine. He stammered, "Dale, do you comprehend the sheer madness you speak?" Dale smirked. "I am not launching a war today. We strike in exactly 10 years. But from the shadows, 10 years?" the main character echoed. "Even now, rebel factions across every continent crave absolute liberation. Vassals just like you, Duke Saxe, secretly dread the Empire's treacherous blade turning against them. The economy crumbles. Lawlessness spreads like wildfire daily. Though the forced unification of the 7 continents is done, the scars of war fester. Soon, the desperate masses will amass armies to shield their homelands from Imperial tyranny. They will fund shadowed resistance factions everywhere." He then laid out a brilliant blueprint for the Empire's total destruction, strategizing deeply until dusk fell. Dale finally asked what his father was plotting. Noir beamed. "Your monstrous talents truly know no limits. You perceive hidden truths even I miss. I am overwhelmingly proud to call you my son. Starting today, you are no longer merely my eldest boy or just a 10-year-old child. I will treat you as my true heir, the absolute ruler who will command House Saxe." Shocked, our hero gasped. "Father!" Noir firmly gripped his shoulder, declaring, "As the family head, I will now weigh your every word and respect your vision." Dale's heart raced. He had desperately waited for this moment to finally grasp the absolute power to lead House Saxe himself. Noir then urged Dale to speak freely. "What monumental decision would you make for our bloodline right now?" The main character smirked. "You promised to treat me differently. So, Father, grant me permission to brave the deadly magic tower. Challenge in Necropolis." Noir's eyes widened in sheer shock. The infamous Tower Challenge was a brutal trial determining a mage's ultimate rank, a blood-soaked arena where cultivators clashed with terrifying mystical guardians, obliterating the highest-ranking Black Sentinel's skyrockets, one's cultivation status, and the absolute strongest claims the revered title of Tower Elder. Whoever conquers the legendary peak earns the supreme title of Magic Tower Master. Noir demanded to know why he would risk such a lethal hellscape where death was almost certain. It was far too early. He had not even cultivated his third magic circle yet. Dale coldly vowed he soon would. Noir protested, noting that mortals normally only break through to the third circle in their 20s. Even for a monstrous prodigy who had already shattered the second circle, this would be suicidal. Dale fiercely replied that this trial concerned the destiny of House Saxe. Noir demanded answers. The main character declared that crushing this test would forge his proceded absolute authority as the heir, forging a terrifying reputation, built on absolute power, silencing the treacherous noble's gossip. Noir breathed deeply. Is that why you hunger for the tower's trial? Our hero nodded firmly. Noir smiled fiercely. Very well. I leave your fate in your hands. Dale bowed with thrilling anticipation, vowing to prove his legendary worth. Days later, within the shadow of the City of Death, Necropolis, trembling mages watched a dark carriage approach, murmuring in absolute awe. The monstrous prodigy had finally arrived. The crowd bowed deeply, crying out praises to the Dark Duke. Dale stepped out of the shadows, releasing an exaggerated, entirely unbothered yawn. He glanced at the groveling mages, wondering if his sheer aura was too terrifying today. Voices erupted. It is the Duke and young Master Dale. Whispers of disbelief spread like venom. Is he truly the Empire's most unrivaled genius? One scoffed under his breath. He looks pathetic and weak today. Another fiercely warned him not to doubt the boy's monstrous power, whispering that his sword cultivation rivaled elite knights of the Dark Court. But lurking nearby, Velix sneered with venom. What garbage. As the Academy's top graduate, the Academy's absolute elite, destined to conquer this tower. One bitter rival sneered, this fragile little noble will shatter if touched. Eris bowed in deep reverence, offering utmost respect to the Tower Master. Noir's heavy voice echoed, we haven't seen each other in ages, Eris. She bowed lower. It's an absolute honor, serving young Master Dale. Eris stood tall, the Tower's esteemed Grand Elder and Secretary, commanding the shadows flawlessly in the Dark Duke's sheer absence. Noir commanded, guide Dale through the impending bloodbath. The boy nodded. Yes, Father. My fate rests in her hands. She smiled coldly. Yes, young master. Step this way. 59 elite graduates eagerly await your arrival. Every single one will face this brutal trial alongside you. Throwing the heavy doors wide open, she declared, behold the desperate challengers braving the tower's wrath. Dale's piercing gaze swept the room. Eris's voice rang out. Welcome, you desperate souls. I am Eris, the Grand Elder and Secretary governing the absolute, bloody laws of Balni. Listen closely to the Dark Magic Tower's first brutal trial. Grasp the chained, amulets resting heavily on your chests. This is the fabled necklace of life, a pure battle royale, a ruthless bloodbath for survival points. Each mystic gem holds a powerful defensive ward and exactly one precious life point. Whenever your undead puppets strike a fatal blow on an enemy across this bloody, cursed battlefield, their ward violently activates and completely shatters, marking their total ruin. The conqueror landing the lethal strike steals 1 life point. The first cultivator to hoard a total score reaching +3 points ascends to the next realm. And heed my absolute warning. Using artifacts means instant disqualification. The main character smirked inwardly, analyzing the ruthless rules. A flawless, bloody method to slaughter the absolute weaklings. Suddenly, a rival pointed a trembling finger at him. That kid is a monster. How the hell is a brat already a third circle cultivator? Mark my words, we must butcher this freak first. Another student hesitated nervously. Wait, are we even allowed to target him? Velix sneered. Don't be cowards. The second we stepped inside, it became kill or be killed. Dale's eyes narrowed dangerously. Big words. Let's see if his pathetic skills match his suffocating arrogance. Eris unleashed a piercing scream. Let the bloodbath begin. Magic circles erupted instantly, as everyone blindly resurrected corpses. Every rotting monster charged at the main character. A zombie slashed. Dale parried with lightning speed. A colossal undead brute loomed behind him, crossing its massive, rotting arms. A desperate scream echoed across the room. How is he this fast? Dale's aura exploded, completely flash-freezing the hulking beast. The rival shrieked, water magic! Don't tell me this freak actually cultivates 2 elements. Dale's own undead soldier lunged forward mercilessly. The guy roared, "You dare strike my legion?" He launched a brutal counterattack, but his magic instantly shattered into nothing. "Pathetic," he mocked. He had forged indestructible ice armor over his undead minions. As Dale advanced, Velik shrieked in absolute rage. "Using water magic is cheating. Only dark arts and necromancy are permitted. Any other elemental buffs are strictly forbidden." The main character's eyes gleamed with dark amusement. "Oh really? Point out." "The exact rule demanding we solely use dark magic for enhancements." Ares watched in dead silence. Dale smirked arrogantly. "Since the bloody trial hasn't stopped, I dictate the rules." But suddenly, a terrifying shadowy presence awakened in the dark. Rotten corpses locked onto our main character. The undead horde charged Dale and Velik. Velik sneered. "Numbers will crush him." Dale smirked, thinking, "Wait a minute. Artifacts are strictly banned here. Since that's the absolute rule, only one brutal path remains." Dale bolted toward the armed ghoul formation like a phantom. He flawlessly evaded their strikes, snatched a rusted blade, and roared, "Gotcha now." Securing the weapon, Dale viciously punched the beast's skull. He slashed the bent, heavy blade, instantly vaporizing the creature. The spectator gasped. "Impossible. Those elite undead fell like mere paper." Felix grumbled bitterly. "That is definitely no ordinary weapon." Dale had actually infused cursed bones to forge indestructible steel. He gripped the enhanced blade, advancing on the remaining horde. A giant monster smashed its club down, but Dale leaped through the dust, unleashing a deadly slash. He roared, utterly obliterating the rotting army. Velik trembled violently. "He butchered my ultimate. Death Knight. A spellcaster shouldn't possess such insane swordsmanship." Dale tightly clutched the forder, ATO and sass, bloodied hilt, stalking toward the terrified boy. "Wait, please," he begged. "Young master." "Dale, I surrender." Dale scoffed. "Why so scared? You won't actually perish." He brutally smacked his skull with the flat blade. Velik shrieked, "You absolute monster!" Eris announced, "The massacre is over." Dale clears the stage solo with 60 total points. Dale smirked. "Let those traitors watch. This is just my first step toward ultimate vengeance on the second floor." His new bloody trial was to slaughter a nightmare guardian called the Flesh Golem. Normally, the pathetic survivors would group up, but our ruthless lead had already crushed them all. The colossal beast swung its massive fist. Dale grinned. "Unlike the strict first stage, destructive magical arts are totally unrestrained here. Even without forbidden divine artifacts, my innate power is overwhelmingly sufficient." The grotesque golem lunged violently forward, and Dale unleashed pitch-black demonic mana. This was the absolute perfect chance to push his third circle core. The titan furiously smashed the ground, blasting jagged debris everywhere. The beast bellowed in pure rage, but then suddenly stared at its own melting arm. Dale was channeling a sinister art. Rapid, necrotic decay. Noir watched, stunned. Eris gasped loudly. "Young master, Dale's dark cultivation is terrifying. Why purposefully leave the brute to agonizingly rot, rather than blasting it away?" Dale smirked, remembering his past life of betrayal. Against immortal beasts, this toxic method beat raw explosive firepower. It was lethal. Magical biochemical warfare. Dale plugged his nose against the putrid, rotting stench. He chuckled, wondering if those fools understood the pure, grotesque horror of his plague. A deadly bioweapon fueled by endless dark magic. On that fateful day, Dale utterly shattered the trial, ascending to the 10th floor and forging a legendary new record. He earned 4 quiet days before the brutal 11th floor. Meanwhile, to compensate for his absolute bloodbath down on the lower 1st floor, 59 weakling candidates were granted a pathetic second chance, obviously excluding Dale's overpowered self. Later that dark evening, our vengeful lead stood by a moonlit fountain. Scipia approached, praising his incredibly magnificent, ruthless slaughter. Dale smiled warmly. "Master, my lethal strength stems entirely from your brilliant teachings." Scipia blushed, feeling immense pride from her star pupil. Dale suddenly leaned close to Scipia, asking if she would dare join him for a romantic evening. Her eyes blew wide, totally stunned, gasping, "A date?" Dale smirked softly. "The festival is starting but lurking in the shadows. Then it is decided." Chia smiled gently. "Let us head out together." She pondered the word. "A date? Technically, The boy was not entirely wrong. Still, he must be confusing the true meaning of a date. Dale chuckled softly. Could this be the hidden darkness people whisper about? The Necropolis Town Festival was entirely packed with endless crowds. Chia gently noted that the grueling trials must have drained his core. Dale brushed it off. Besides, they had a few precious days of peace before the next bloody challenge. Chia nodded softly, I see. Her heart felt relieved. They walked through the vibrant streets in comfortable silence, until, Dale whispered, The moon is breathtaking tonight, is it not? Sia tucked her hair. It truly is beautiful, Dale smiled. Their usual banter had shifted into something deeper, yet the quiet stillness felt remarkably warm. It had always been exactly like this with his master. Her unwavering faith kindled a desperate yearning to stand as an equal by her side. Just days ago, during his agonizing breakthrough, the third circle, her profound teachings finally clicked. Confronting his absolute inner void, violent mana erupted around Dale, and crimson blood stained his trembling face. Clutching his burning chest, his mind roared. To shatter his mortal limits, he absolutely to overload his second circle core. Enduring this catastrophic storm of energy was the only path to the third circle. 3 divine seals fiercely ignited, as an ethereal blade impaled his soul. He gasped. This shadow sword, Dale desperately scanned. The freezing, snow-covered wasteland. This realm, he whispered. When a cultivator dives into profound enlightenment, their spiritual domain awakens. So this barren wasteland was his own soul, a desolate world of pure consciousness. Since the very dawn of his rebirth, it had been a landscape of absolute, crushing emptiness, Dale realized. Yet within this eternal void, Master Chia had offered her radiant hand. Perhaps that was why. Sia had become the solitary guiding star in his dark universe. Dale looked up. Master, I truly like you. Sia blinked in utter confusion, her eyes widening. What did you just say? Dale held his ground. He confessed his feelings. She gently smiled and pulled him into a warm embrace. I adore you too, little Dale. He sighed internally. Being reincarnated definitely had some frustrating limits. Days later, the brutal trials resumed on the 11th floor. His romantic confession had utterly failed. She clearly saw it as the innocent babbling of a 10-year-old boy. Shaking off the rejection, he locked his focus on surviving. Eris gestured forward, declaring, The format for this trial is a merciless one-on-one arcane duel. The victor ascends to the 12th floor. A third circle elite, Albert Rosenheim, sneered. Such an absolute honor to face you, little Master Dale. Do not expect an ounce of mercy just because you are a pathetic brat. The 11th floor permitted unrestricted use of deadly artifacts and underhanded, mystical tactics. It meant Dale's protective amulet of life could no longer guarantee his absolute survival. With all artifact restraints entirely shattered, Albert sneered with malicious intent. He would not hold back. He planned to completely obliterate this prodigy, revealing the crushing difference in cultivation. Albert erupted with hostile mana, roaring, Let this slaughter commence. He barked a manic laugh. Keep your guard up, brat. I am nothing, like those weak academy fools you have fought before. This is exactly where your little legend dies. He conjured massive destruction seals, taunting the boy to try and survive. Lethal mana arrows rained down relentlessly, but Dale evaded them with terrifying grace. A cowardly ambush before the starting signal? Dale's eyes darkened with ruthless killing intent. A blatant rule break. Yet, the corrupt judges remained completely silent, refusing to halt the bloodbath. They greedily wanted to witness his true power. This twisted world thrives on absolute strength. That's exactly why mages disgust him. Albert commanded his foul, undead creations, forcing their eternal, rotting obedience. Vile zombies suddenly spawned directly in, his path shamelessly closing the distance. Albert shrieked out, My dark servants, forged. From the deepest, bloodthirsty abyss, the main character scoffed. What a terribly cringeworthy speech. Where did he memorize such pathetic acting? Still, his aura clearly surpasses a normal rookie's. He swiftly evaded the incoming onslaught, dancing past the blows. Albert arrogantly sneered, How long will you cowardly run? Dodging won't earn you victory. The rotting corpses lunged relentlessly. He countered with blinding speed, launching the fiends like rag dolls. He taunted, Is this truly your absolute best? He unleashed a devastating blast. The monster's vile form instantly shattered Albert declared triumphantly. "I stand victorious today, young Master Dale." He then froze in sheer horror. "Hold on. When did he move? Where the hell did he go?" Dale whispered from the shadows. "Isn't scamming kids pathetic?" Albert frantically scanned the arena, panicking wildly. Pitch-black mana surged like a violent storm around Dale, teleporting right behind his prey. "You seem quite terrified," he smirked. It was an ingenious ambush, yet insufficient for total annihilation. He flawlessly activated his dark shadow technique. Demonic tentacles viciously snared Albert's legs, while an eerie voice echoed. "So hungry. Starving. Can I devour his soul? Please? Master, let me feed." An abyssal shadow dragon materialized majestically before the trembling fool. Dale calmly commanded, "Fine, just don't gorge yourself." The entire audience watched the horrific scene with trembling dread as Albert shrieked agonizingly. Demonic limbs crushed his fragile body, while bystanders gasped. "Oops," Dale chuckled darkly. "My pets get a bit aggressive when famished." Albert desperately begged for his pathetic life. "Halt," Dale ordered. The abyss instantly retreated. "A booming announcement echoed. "First round victor. Dale!" He smirked dangerously. "Now, who dares face me?" In round 2, the spectating mages instantly surrendered, valuing their pathetic lives over false pride and glory. From round 3 forward, every single coward forfeited, skipping straight to the prided finals by default. Unbothered, Dale relentlessly purified his core, perfectly forming 3 supreme, magical rings, as he ruthlessly slaughtered the tower's floor guardians one by one. Reaching the 20th level, a truly formidable obstacle finally blocked his path. The legendary Headless Horseman, a cursed knight lacking a skull, a terrified voice whispered. "That's a nightmare soldier forged by a dark tower elder. This beast is a catastrophe, unlike anything we've witnessed. Even for a prodigy like young Master Dale, defeating this monster might be absolutely impossible." Dale inwardly sighed, wondering if this predetermined fate would just bore him to death. He unleashed an overwhelming wave of abyssal mana, blasting it straight at the phantom. Spectators gasped. "What in heaven's name? Look, down there!" The imposing Death Knight suddenly dropped to its knees. "The Guardian is bowing down!" Dale narrowed his eyes in confusion, then swiftly swung his glowing blade, granting the cursed soul final peace. The massive armor collapsed, dissolving into scattered shadows. Such terrifying loyalty, abandoning its sworn tower duties just to submit, Dale pondered. He surveyed the shocked crowd, thinking, perhaps I flexed slightly too hard? I suppose mass hysteria is natural. An elder's ultimate creation literally betrayed its dark master just to swear absolute allegiance to me. This blatantly proves my cultivation level completely rivals the Dark Tower elders themselves. I never meant to expose my true immortal power yet, but unfortunately, he proved his supreme power. Should he retreat now? He stepped aside, and a shadow questioned his path. The gateway stood open, right? Why turn back? Now? Dale pondered silently. Though his cultivation soared, a forbidden boundary remained that he dared not cross. An abyssal realm dreaded by ancient beasts awaited, holding unknown horrors. Thus, Dale conquered the brutal trial. A sudden, piercing cry shattered the silence. The Supreme Lord of the Mystic Spire had descended. The entire, dark faction knelt in terrifying unison. Corrupt nobles and scheming elders bowed, showing their absolute obedience. Every cultivator pledged their soul to father and son. Thanks to Dale's monstrous awakening, the fractured northern lands finally began uniting beneath their blood-stained banner. Across the frozen empire, the formidable Saxony knights slaughtered vile beasts mercilessly. One warrior exuded an overwhelming, deadly arrogance, flashing his blade so swiftly the demonic creatures died before blinking. The loyal vanguard massacred for their young master Dale of Saxony, roaring their battle cries. Having shattered the Spire's illusions, the ruthless Duke Noir named Dale commander over a death squad, hunting the savage horde. Our young lord guided his troops flawlessly. An impossible bloody burden for a 10-year-old child, yet Dale hoisted his legendary blade, relishing his savage triumph over the beasts. Despite his youth, absolutely no one questioned his terrifying authority. As the rightful heir to the Dark Throne, he methodically subjugated the frozen north. Shortly after, Dale approached Duke Noir, coldly reporting the slaughter of 145 enemies. Noir demanded to know his exact troop casualties. Dale stated only 3 sustained mere flesh. Wounds, nothing more. Noir narrowed his eyes. Did you cast defensive magic to shield? Them, Dale scoffed and countered. Not at all. My pure swordsmanship and the blade of Saxony protected them. Noir grinned, fiercely praising his heir. Dale smirked back, but suddenly, Uncle Helmet interrupted their vicious exchange, bowing deeply to Noir, declaring, Your Grace. It appears young Master Dale has already perfected controlling massive cavalry formations. Dale humbly credited this terrifying growth to Sir Helmet's brutal training. He knew Helmet had secretly forged his killing arts, tactical mind, and ruthless war strategies. Helmet chuckled, predicting that the boy would soon instigate massive, blood-soaked territorial wars. Dale touched his brow, then fiercely thought, yes, absolute conquest. He hungered for the coming bloodshed. Moments later, Charlotte clashed with Dale, screaming fiercely. A deadly duel was erupting between the two, her killing intent locked onto him. Suddenly, her deadly aura grazed Dale's cheek, forcing him to sharply dodge and roll backwards, seamlessly evading her lethal strike, then glaring at his rival with an arrogant smirk. Their divine weapons collided repeatedly, sparking an explosive, evenly matched war. A heartbeat later, cold steel pressed against Dale's throat. He murmured in sheer astonishment at her monstrous cultivation speed. Charlotte glared back with profound sadness, whispering that he knew her power still could not match his. He laughed, asking, playfully, Did I push you too hard? She scoffed. You are already a third, a realm cultivator who conquered the 20th floor. Ever since that day, literally everyone blindly worships you as young Master Dale, over and over. Aren't you disgusted by their fake loyalty? Dale smiled reassuringly. You will awaken your true strength. Charlotte, for a 10-year-old girl, your foundational aura is utterly terrifying by mortal standards. Charlotte's face flushed with a mix of fury and embarrassment. But suddenly, Charlotte exploded, screaming at him to stop treating her like some helpless kid. Dale smirked. But you are one. Furious, she shoved a finger right in his face and shrieked that he was no older. He blinked, pointing at his own chest. Me? Mentally, he was centuries older. Annoyed, Charlotte snapped at him to drop the subject. Later that day, our main character sat in his private cultivation chamber, facing Uncle Helmet. Today's brutal lesson focused on mastering the art of war. The deadly hammer and anvil strike. Uncle used carved stone pieces on the table to demonstrate. He explained the brutal truth of the battlefield. When heavy riders clash on the flanks, their prime mission is to shatter the enemy lines and completely trap their forces. Meanwhile, the foot soldiers act as an unbreakable wall against the opposing charge. It is crushing the enemy like helpless scrap iron trapped on a blacksmith's heavy anvil, struck relentlessly by a massive hammer. This slaughter relies on elite riders. Dale marveled. Was such utter destruction only possible because of the legendary Black Cavalry? War is pure bloodshed in every realm. Shifting the mood, Dale suddenly asked, How is Charlotte's aura cultivation progressing? He thought deeply about her. Growth. She was no monstrous genius like him, but her leveling speed was terrifying. She had already unlocked basic sword intent, and soon she would awaken the true aura core and inherit the martial arts legacy of the mighty House Sax. Yet, a dark shadow of doubt remained. Dale questioned if Charlotte's natural talent truly matched their brutal clan style. While spellcasters forge mana rings into raw magic, aura knights refine world energy through their supreme physical cultivation methods. Mages construct vast towers of knowledge, but martial knights forge their ultimate power by passing down bloodline sword arts. Among all factions, the dreaded Northern Black Cavalry crush their enemies like unstoppable steel chariots. The devastating force of House Sax's Night Raven Knights proves that the North rules the battlefield with pure, crushing, brute strength. But here was the fatal flaw. Charlotte's true sword path was built on lightning-fast speed and flowing grace. She wields a rapid, unbound blade. With her innate gifts, she might reach the lowest tier of the legendary Seven-Sword Masters, but she would never claim the throne of the First Sword. That absolute peak of the Seven Swords was the divine realm her father once ruled. Dale muttered darkly, The Sword of Blossom, if only that legendary martial art had not been erased. Uncle Helmet scowled bitterly, revealing the dark truth that it was completely destroyed during the tragic ruin of the knightly nation. Dale clenched his fists. Could such divine power truly be wiped from existence forever? From then on, Dale's leveling grind became a blood-soaked nightmare. slaughtering demonic beasts. While mastering his aura, his fearsome reputation exploded across the entire realm. Soon, the heavens would test his newfound power. Noir's face twisted in pure dread as he demanded the scout repeat his terrifying words. A trembling subordinate bowed and choked out the grim news. The neighboring lands, ruled by the treacherous Baron Parker, had suddenly declared a blood war, greedily demanding total control of their spirit copper mine. In this brutal cultivation world, borders meant nothing before the blade. Yet, a lowly baron daring to strike against a high-ranking lord was absolute madness. It reeked of conspiracy. The scout dropped a devastating bombshell. If they refused to surrender the mine and fight, the betrayal ran deeper. Count Brandenburg was secretly backing the baron from the shadows. A deadly trap had been sprung. The flames of revenge and war had just ignited. A treacherous letter arrived, demanding the Saint Knight's deployment in exchange for stolen mine profits. Both Dale and Noir were completely stunned. Their enemy's foul strategy was suddenly crystal clear. Dale still burned from the crushing humiliation suffered before his father. If they pushed, Dale would deliver absolute vengeance. Did Count Brandenburg truly dare to provoke them again? He must have spent every waking second plotting to avenge his wounded pride against the Dark Duke. But launching an all-out territorial war was too risky. So, that snake targeted a volatile border zone to hide his dirty tracks. What a cowardly, pathetic worm. Fueled by vengeance, Dale declared to his father that he would personally crush them alongside the elite House Saxe Knights. Noir lashed back. "You are too weak for this. Stop making such reckless demands. Slaughtering humans requires far more ruthlessness than hunting mere monsters." Noir then assured Baron Grenbelt, swearing to defend the territory himself. The Baron bowed in deep gratitude, leaving Dale shattered by his father's blatant lack of faith. Retreating to his room, Dale scoffed bitterly to his uncle. He was ready for this bloodshed. Why was his power ignored? Helmet offered a gentle smile, urging him to ignore the insult. The Duke's harshness stung, but a deeper motive surely existed. Dale clenched his fists in silence. Seeing this, Helmet revealed a secret backup plan. He pulled out a mystical board and asked, "Care for a strategy match?" Dale recognized the ancient chess-like format. He narrowed his eyes. "A simulation of war?" Helmet grinned. "Exactly. This brutal game perfectly mirrored the unforgiving battlefield. The rules were maddeningly complex, but mastering them unlocked divine tactical insight. Playing would sharpen his mind for true combat." Suddenly, raw determination ignited. Dale ruthlessly snatched the magical chessboard, raising it high. "This changes everything," he roared. Startled, Helmet quickly called out, "Wait, where are you going?" Dale sprinted straight back to his father. The Duke glared. "If I crush you in this strategy game," Dale demanded, "will you let me join the upcoming war?" His fiery gaze refused to yield. War wasn't just mindless slaughter, but a ruthless battle of wits. "Test my tactical power, right now." Helmet nervously chuckled, trying to drag the reckless boy away, but Noir's aura spiked. "Leave him be." Both Dale and Helmet froze in shock. Noir's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Win, and your wish is granted." Dale's heart hammered with pure adrenaline, deeply thanking his father, but the Duke coldly countered. "Lose, and you completely abandon this battlefield." Time warped as their epic tactical clash unfolded. Suddenly, Helmet's jaw hit the floor. "Heavens above," he gasped. Against all impossible odds, Dale achieved absolute victory. Evading the Dark Duke's ruthless traps, Dale dominated the terrain and forces brilliantly. Helmet was completely paralyzed. Dale had conquered the legendary Duke twice. Smirking, Dale leaned in. "So, is it? Keep his sacred word, right?" Noir's eyes widened in shock. "Fine, but when did you master this strategy?" Dale awkwardly rubbed his neck, claiming that he discovered an ancient battle manual in the restricted archives and immediately began cultivating its secrets. A total lie, obviously. If he had not faked this brilliant excuse, he would seem suspiciously monstrous. Noir slowly stood up, declaring that a vow of honor was absolute. Upon his very soul, he granted Dale absolute command over the knights. For the impending bloodbath, Helmut gasped in pure horror, screaming, "Your Grace, wait!" Noir silenced him instantly. He stated that despite his immense expectations, the supreme face of House Saxe was on the line. Failure meant death. He demanded for the final time. "Can you truly survive this carnage alone?" Dale smirked confidently, declaring, Absolutely. Father, just trust my overwhelming power. I will forge our epic victory. Placing a fist over his beating heart, Noir chuckled darkly. Excellent martial resolve. Now go, let him seize his glorious destiny and return a blood-soaked conqueror. Meanwhile, deep inside the Brandenburg fortress, Count Malberg Brandenburg roared in fury. He has been drinking trash liquor in the slums all day again, hasn't he? Philip scoffed. Rumor says that Sax Brat is personally leading his elite knights to war. What joke is he playing? Philip told his raging father to relax. He is just a 10-year-old arrogant kid. I am the supreme heir of Brandenburg. Philip then faced his father, begging for the glorious chance to utterly crush this pathetic Sax boy and mercilessly wipe out his entire knight order in one devastating, brutal strike. Brandenburg erupted into blazing fury. Grinding his teeth with murderous intent, he slammed his fist down. The overwhelming aura shattered the table, making Philip recoil in terror. The Count snarled. Did you seriously just call him a 10-year-old brat? Philip trembled in confusion. Brandenburg roared. An arrogant kid from House Sax? Fool. That boy is a terrifying immortal monster you couldn't defeat in 100 lifetimes. Philip collapsed to the floor in sheer terror, shattering his bottle of cheap liquor. Brandenburg spat at him, calling him a completely worthless insect, far inferior, even to a 10-year-old. He violently cursed himself for not destroying Charlotte ages ago. For this upcoming bloodbath, he officially gave him command over the knights. Philip sneered. Thank you, father. But Brandenburg's eyes darkened with disgust. Why are you looking happy? Trash? Your only mission is to stand around looking pretty as a meat shield. Philip gasped. What does that even mean? The Count coldly declared that Sir Milvus takes absolute tactical control. Philip was nothing but a useless puppet for army morale. That was his only purpose. He then ordered Sir Milvus to drag this pathetic excuse of a son out. Milvus instantly seized the cowardly heir by the shoulders, hauling him away while Philip screamed in absolute terror. Count Brandenburg turned toward the window, bitterly realizing he desperately craved to enter this bloody battlefield himself, but his pride forbade fighting against a mere child. Was this terrifying escalation all part of your twisted master plan, Duke Noir? A few days later, in Baron Ginbelt's cursed lands, the terrified lord sat trembling, dreading the impending doom. Cold sweat dripped down his pale face as ominous shadows loomed. Suddenly, the legendary young master arrived. The entire vanguard roared a deafening, honorable greeting to Lord Dale of House Sax. They praised his immense courage for marching here. The veteran knights nervously whispered among themselves. Is this Supreme Commander seriously just a kid? Does he even know how to channel aura? They call him an immortal prodigy, but still, doubt lingered. Suddenly, Ginbelt gasped in pure terror as Dale stepped forward, revealing his true. Fearful, he approached Dale, bowing deep. With you leading us, young master, we finally feel true confidence and profound relief. Dale nodded at the praise, but deep down a heavy tension lingered. Grinbelt trembled, his mind screaming in terror. They sent a 10-year-old child, even with the dreaded black cavalry at his back, handing supreme military command to this mere boy is utter madness. Forcing a smile, he begged them to step inside for a lavish welcome banquet. But Dale's eyes grew cold. We have zero time to waste. Grinbelt choked on his breath, stammering out a terrified question. Instantly, Dale's blade flashed, stopping inches from the man's throat. Before anything else, I must gauge the absolute limits of my new forces. Step forward. Among the warriors here, who holds the title of the absolute strongest? Grinbelt stood completely paralyzed by this dominating aura. Dale's voice turned utterly freezing. I will ask you only once more. Who is your strongest cultivator? An arrogant voice interrupted. That would be me, young lord. None here can match my martial prowess. A crimson-haired knight stepped up, radiating pure arrogance. He sneered internally. Is this spoiled brat only waving that shiny weapon because his wealthy clan bought his cultivation rank? I will personally shatter his delusions of grandeur. The young master's brow furrowed, his piercing gaze locking onto the knight's arrogant eyes. Lowering his blade from the trembling Grinbelt, he smirked mockingly. You clearly doubt my foundation and strength. You see nothing more than a pathetic 10-year-old child suddenly handed absolute authority without earning it through blood. In a flash, he smashed his blade into the earth, shaking the very ground. I, too, deeply doubt your loyalties. But there is one absolute method to silence this treasonous talk. through raw, undeniable martial power. However, Dale scoffed, noticing the so-called elite warrior reeked of cheap liquor. You are intoxicated. This pathetic display means I need not test your ruined foundation. My disappointment is confirmed. Or does liquid courage fuel your weak spirit? Consumed by blinding fury, the disgraced knight drew his steel. You asked for death, he roared, aiming his blade at Dale's heart. He screamed his lineage, vowing to cleanse this ultimate insult and defend his martial honor with the sacred Baron's blade. Dale offered a chilling, bloodthirsty smile. In the blink of an eye, they clashed on the training grounds. Dale stood like an immortal mountain before a furious enemy. You know my blade's legend, right? Harbach threw his head back, cackling like a madman at the warning. Oh, absolutely. The famously pathetic, cursed little weapon. Dale narrowed his eyes at this fatal arrogance. Did this doomed fool possess a hidden cultivation technique? Suddenly, Harbach roared like a beast, launching a totally reckless assault. As his vicious strike closed in, Dale effortlessly deflected the lethal blow, sending shockwaves from his palm. Terrifying, abyssal demonic energy exploded outward from the place. Young Master's grip, leaving Harbach utterly paralyzed. A second later, the immortal genius unleashed a devastating flurry of strikes, forcing the traitor back. Dale smirked, realizing this trash couldn't even manifest a basic sword aura. True, commanding an arcane, aura blade remains a heavenly realm reached only by supreme elites. But still, the fool was burning his life force. I should show respect, Dale whispered. Instantly, the boy straightened his posture, forming an ancient cultivation seal as overwhelmingly catastrophic. Spiritual pressure erupted. Harbach shrieked in absolute terror. What demonic art is this? Vicious tendrils of dark energy shattered the earth, lunging for his soul. The traitor froze, his pride crumbling into rage. He swung his blade wildly to survive the onslaught, but his resistance was futile. As Dale's lethal strike descended, a mysterious glowing artifact suddenly, shattering his absolute focus. Their martial clash dragged on, as Dale stood like an unyielding mountain. Honestly, the man's cultivation base wasn't anything special. Suddenly, a shift in aura made Dale narrow his eyes, in suspicion. Harbach collapsed onto the dirt, gripping his failing meridians as fellow warriors rushed forward, frantically checking his pulse. Our main character just stood there, absolutely stunned by this pathetic display. Did he actually crumble? Was his foundation really that weak? Harbach was dragged upward, and instantly, Grinbelt roared, Young Master Dale, have you gone mad? You just crippled one of our elite fighters right before a life-or-death war. Dale's killing intent flared, snapping back. Baron Grinbelt, are you blind to reality? With such useless mortal trash, your forces are nothing but dead weight. Or did you scheme to hide in safety while House Saxes bleeds on the front lines? Grinbelt stood, completely paralyzed by the accusation, stammering, What? Dale stepped forward, pressing the plate. Interrogation. Is this fragile weakling truly the pinnacle of your martial order? Harbach dropped his head in deep disgrace, utterly silenced. Dale arrogantly proclaimed that House Saxes never abandons an ally in battle, but that gives no excuse to breed parasites. From this moment on, your sect will serve as my vanguard. Choose your fate now. Submit to me, or lose my protection entirely. Seconds later, every single warrior collapsed to their knees before Dale. Their blood oaths echoed through the valley. Sometime later, the night deepened. Alina wept bitterly in her chambers. Noir stepped close, gently brushing the sorrow from her cheeks, whispering that her fears were baseless. That boy had shattered every mortal limitation. He knew with absolute certainty Dale was destined to reach heaven-defying realms of power. Alina remained silent, lost in her agonizing grief. Noir stood tall, smiling fiercely. One day, their son would conquer this entire realm. Back in reality, Dale gripped his temples, struck by a bitter truth. Everything was a joke. He had cultivated like a frog at the bottom of a well, finally seeing just how rotten the outside world truly was. He was surrounded by absolute trash, nothing but stepping stones. No wonder the Divine Sword faction invaded this domain. They definitely smelled Grenbelt's weakness. Well, if they wanted a war, he would give them slaughter. Dawn broke, and the disgraced Harbach was hauling a massive spiritual boulder. Blood stained the heavy ropes as he pulled, until he violently crashed into the dirt. The northern disciples sneered, barking that it was too soon for his aura to break. Get up, you useless insect. Do you dare call yourself a northern cultivator? Dale lounged upon an iron throne, coldly watching the pathetic struggle. Harbach cried out about his damaged meridians, but Dale ruthlessly mocked his zero effort, already whining like a mortal. He shifted his cold gaze to Baron Grinbelt, ordering him to shatter these disciples' limits, starting entirely with physical torture, because their cultivation was utter garbage. The Baron swallowed his pride, accepting the brutal command. Next, Dale ordered a shadow messenger dispatched to Baron Parker to boldly propose a diplomatic meeting. The terrified guard stammered, questioning the word negotiations. Dale's lips curled into a sinister smirk. Yes, do not panic. 4. I refuse to swallow any humiliating peace treaties. I merely need to hunt someone before the bloodshed. Soon their forces arrived at the Deadlands border. Dale sat waiting, but the shadow approaching wasn't human at all. Dale sat waiting. He knew they had barely 2 weeks of survival left. Since the Knights of St. Magdalene were exhausted from their grueling, endless campaign, their dwindling rations would spell their utter doom first. His own defense forces were an unbreakable iron wall. A loyal subordinate announced Lord Philip's arrival. Dale smirked coldly, knowing exactly who they sent. This pathetic, powdered pawn of a noble. Commander Philip actually dressed up for him. As the arrogant fool grinned, Dale spotted Sir Milvis, the true mastermind, standing like a shadow behind him. Dale offered a mocking greeting as the foolish lord took his seat. Philip sneered arrogantly, asking if this weakling truly wanted to negotiate. After all, the bloody battlefield is no place for the weak. Dale smiled, piercing him with an icy stare, and asked why they even came. Philip babbled about reasons, but Dale instantly cut his pathetic rambling short. I wasn't asking you, Dale sneered. Philip blinked in dumbfounded shock. What? Dale declared he had zero interest in the barking of a mere puppet. He locked eyes with the true threat hiding behind him. Sir Milvis. The real sword. Philip's fragile ego completely shattered. What did you just say? Dale laughed. Am I wrong? Why else would the sacred blade be trusted? To an absolute failure like you? Philip's face turned completely red with fury. Milvis desperately yelled, begging the young lord to ignore the enemy's venomous trap. Philip clenched his trembling fists, cursing him, that Count Brandenburg secretly viewed. His own son as a complete disgrace was a heavily guarded secret. How could this outsider possibly know? Dale twisted the verbal knife deeper. Isn't it tragic that your own father holds zero respect for his heir? Sensing disaster, Milvis roared that these poison negotiations were officially over. They needed to retreat right now. Philip stood there, his hands violently shaking. Defeated, Philip mumbled about leaving. But Dale wasn't finished, destroying his pride. Shouldn't you at least pretend to be in charge? Philip's aura flared wildly. Dale ruthlessly mocked him for nodding along to a servant's orders so obediently. He called him a pathetic, whimpering dog. Was this a noble family's firstborn? No, just a frightened little mutt on a very short leash. Philip ground his teeth, his pride totally shattered. A dog on a leash? Milvis pleaded again, but Philip savagely screamed at his own guard to shut up. Dale leaned back with a wicked, victorious grin, watching the chaos unfold perfectly. He loudly pondered who truly held Philip's strings, the Holy Sword or Milvis. Blinded by rage, Philip turned and unleashed all his fury on poor Milvis. Dale's psychological warfare was working perfectly. His true goal was sowing absolute discord. He never planned to negotiate with these arrogant fools. Striking while the iron was hot, Dale commanded his loyal subordinate Bale to step outside. The loyal guard bowed deeply. Your will is absolute, Lord Dale. As the door clicked shut, Dale spread his arms. He proposed a private, true, leader-to-leader chat. Just the two real masters of destiny. A private duel of minds to decide the entire bloody battlefield's fate. His ego stroked. Philip aggressively roared his agreement. Milvis screamed out in sheer panic. But Philip banished him, screaming, "Get out! I am the supreme commander here." Milvis stood frozen in horror. The trap was set. But what terrifying betrayal awaited them? Crush the arrogant Saxe heir himself. Milvis cursed, realizing his fatal mistake. He swallowed the trap completely. Gritting his teeth, he bowed. Your will is absolute. He stormed out. Alone in the shadows, Dale sneered, turning his gaze toward Philip. Thanks for the backup, Dale smirked. As stated, this summit was pure business. Philip scoffed. So, what's your ultimate price? Dale's eyes darkened as he proposed his terms. If the St. Magdalene Order retreated from the impending massacre, House Saxe would generously fund their pathetic retreat back to the capital. Philip froze, his aura flaring. What? He roared. To him, this insulting proposal was pure betrayal. Exactly, Dale sneered. Forgive my brutal honesty, but withdraw your forces now. Otherwise, utter annihilation awaits you. Your sect will burn, and hundreds of cultivators will become mere slaves. The Holy Sword's legacy will be shattered, dragging your entire lineage through the dirt. This is your final chance to salvage a tiny fraction of your shattered pride. Boiling rage twisted Philip's face as sweat poured down. Snapping, he violently kicked his chair. Milvus was right, he bellowed. You've been playing us, mocking our power. Dale simply grinned. What a pity, you just threw away your scene. Lifeline. Philip growled. What absolute garbage are you spewing? Dale chuckled. Aren't you? Terrified? When this slaughter ends, the bloody blame won't fall on Commander Milvus. It will crush the Count's profoundly useless and utterly pathetic firstborn son. Philip's spiritual pressure exploded. Pure garbage. The final victor takes all. I'll shatter your arrogant cultivation core right in front of both armies. Dale flashed a cold, knowing smile. With negotiations officially dead in the water, chaos soon erupted across the desolate, blood-soaked wastelands of the Grimbelt. Milvus scaled the fortress walls, his eyes fixed on the distant spiritual scouts. He demanded a real-time aura report. Sir, a cultivator shouted, House Sax has fully unleashed their vanguard. Milvus clenched his fists. This young Sax heir was a terrifying anomaly. His cold, calculating aura defied all mortal logic entirely. A true monster in disguise. Despite merely having 10 years of cultivation, underestimating this prodigy meant certain death. Yet, this bloody crisis was their perfect strike window. Before the 10-year-old's full demonic power awakened, Milvus drew his spiritual blade. Crush him before he ascends to immortality. His warriors ignited their weapons, roaring, Let's slaughter this arrogant brat. Meanwhile, a blood-stained scout crashed at Dale's feet, screaming that the enemy's core formation was charging. A sinister, bloodthirsty grin spread across Dale's face. Perfect. Raising his legendary blade to the heavens, he bellowed, Warriors of Sax, our vengeance begins now. Drown these pathetic mortals in our supreme bloodline's wrath. The disciples roared, unleashing terrifying energy. Suddenly, a deafening war horn shattered the sky. The battle of absolute annihilation commenced as spiritual blades collided violently. Crimson blood sprayed the battlefield. First Vanguard, charge! Milvus desperately commanded through the chaos. Surviving meant completely obliterating the legendary Black Cavalry of House Sax. However, the enemy's hidden cultivation level remained a terrifying, impenetrable mystery. To prevent total massacre, the arrogant Lord Philip was instantly stripped of Vanguard duties and hidden in the center. Baron Parker's elite immortal sect must immediately reinforce the left flank's dying cultivators. While the front line desperately held on, Milvus led an elite ambush. But lurking in the shadows, a horrifying presence awakened. The steel-clad cultivators of House Sax. If their core and left formation survived this brutal assault, their martial strategy would triumph. They absolutely could not waste this. Heaven sent chance, he channeled chi, roaring at his warriors, who screamed back that this was pure suicide. Yet others howled they would bleed for their martial sect, violently charging forward. Suddenly, the martial knights froze, completely paralyzed by overwhelming sights. Do not rush your deaths, Dale's chilling voice echoed. The trembling youths realized their doom was averted. Young Master Dale himself had descended from the heavens to their rescue, personally commanding the deadly vanguard. Dale roared, forbidding a single soul from stepping back. Fight until your cores shatter. Raising his spirit blade, he violently screamed for House Sax. His entire sect erupted into the bloodbath. Absolute slaughter instantly commenced, while Milvus analyzed his every movement. It made zero sense. Had they purposely planned to expose their ultimate weapon from the very start? To think he blindly walked right into their deadly trap. Arrogant brat, Milvus realized this was the exact bloody clash he had craved. Erupting with killing intent, he hoisted his heavy blade and bellowed, For the Gerst al-C, Holy Order of St. Magdalene, for Patriarch Brandenburg. His cultivators roared back, Annihilate them before the gates. Slaughter them all. The two overwhelming powers violently collided, igniting a blinding shockwave of chaotic chi. Suddenly, terrifying streams of dark demonic energy pierced right through the radiant explosion. Every single warrior on the battlefield paralyzingly watched. In absolute horror, Milvus roared that they must crush this anomaly instantly, commanding them, To strike. His elite cavalry must violently shatter Dale's spiritual core and end this wretched war. They would prove their supreme martial dominance. Surging forward like a tsunami of death, Milvos closed in, ruthlessly piercing an enemy's heart. But in a split second, a shadow assassin materialized, swinging a highly lethal strike. As the hidden warrior's cold steel grazed Milvos's throat, absolute fury ignited his meridians, and in the next breath, the attacker was brutally impaled. Milvos mercilessly slaughtered every cultivator in his path, fighting like a demon. As another corpse fell, a sinister realization abruptly hit his mind. This battlefield made zero sense. A chilling dread consumed him. They had easily crushed the front line, yet the enemy was retreating far too perfectly. Just as suspicion peaked, a subordinate screamed to fall back and restore their formation. Sweat dripped down Milvos's face. Weren't the Black Iron Cavalry meant to be undisputed gods of the battlefield? Why was this suffocating phantom of death gripping his heart? Right on cue, a blood-soaked messenger collapsed, gasping, "Commander!" A disastrous transmission arrived from the Graxdotable. Left flank. Lord Parker's legion has been completely annihilated. They instantly shattered under the monstrous pressure. Milvos roared, "Impossible!" The left flank fell. Pure disbelief twisted his features amidst the chaotic slaughter. A nearby warrior gasped in absolute terror, asking how those lowly trashes could manifest sword aura. Meanwhile, behind shifting front lines, a desperate scout scrambled toward young Master Philip, stammering that the defensive line held by Lord Parker was begging for backup. House Sax's terrifying aura masters had violently broken through their impenetrable defenses. A senior elder spat blood, cursing that such power defied reality. How could mere dogs shatter their heavenly formation? Panic-stricken eyes locked onto Master Philip, begging for orders. Philip trembled, consumed by humiliating terror. He remembered Dale's mocking smirk. "When this war burns, the entire bloodline's downfall will rest squarely on your shoulders, you pathetic, talentless excuse for an heir." Grinding his teeth in fury, he violently vowed to slaughter that arrogant brat. But suddenly, a frantic shadow guard appeared, holding a blood-sealed transmission. A dark voice whispered, "Master, a sinister betrayal, just shift the center and rear cavalry, reinforce that left flank's shattered defensive formation." But the traitorous Philip roared for absolute silence. Thrusting his arm forward, he ordered a massive cavalry charge. They would completely obliterate the right flank. While the left side crumbled, he swore to ruthlessly choke out that brat, Dale. Meanwhile, a panicked scout rushed to Captain Milvos with terrifying news. Lord Dale and his elite vanguard were closing in fast. Completely stunned, Milvos only gasped, "What?" Gripping his skull in sheer frustration, Milvos raged about his strict orders to hold the left wing. Philip was a totally brainless traitor. Their right side was already crushing the enemy's fading left wing. Sending backup there was a totally useless move that ruined their deadly momentum. Yet this absolute idiot, blinded by his greedy thirst for the commander's head, completely ignored their desperate cries for backup. This was sheer suicide. Very soon, their left line would violently shatter, trapping them all in a deadly meat grinder. A terrified knight begged, "Captain, we must pull back." But Milvos coldly growled, "No, not yet." The warriors exchanged horrified looks. With a dark glare, Milvos declared, "This bloody war wasn't finished." Meanwhile, Dale watched the chaos with a mocking smirk, eyes burning with absolute confidence. Boiling with rage, Milvos cursed this insolent punk for celebrating too early. He swore to carve that smug smirk off his skull. Raising his heavy blade to the heavens, he roared, "First Vanguard, you are our final unit left." The loyal knights screamed back, begging for their general to finally unleash his ultimate command. Milvos locked his jaw, deciding that in this very second, they would violently pierce the enemy ranks and viciously sever the rival commander's head. "By St. Magdalene's holy grace, let our sacred blades guide our path. Let the goddess of life shield our mortal souls. May the Tees the Hodar modal twin deities bless our strike." His murderous eyes snapped open as he furiously commanded, "The remaining troops, unsheathe your steel and charge behind me." Every single warrior obeyed, without hesitation, charging into the bloody fray. He kept screaming that this sacrifice was for St. Magdalene. As the overwhelming killing intent approached him, Dale simply smirked and turned. The foolish prey had finally stepped right into his trap. A dark grin formed. In the heat of slaughter, a commander's tactical vision always becomes fatally narrow. Pausing his stance, he spun around and casually drew his bowstring, musing how battlefield panic easily rots a weak mortal's ability to logically process danger. Even this grand army was hopelessly blinded by their destined fate. Suddenly, Milvus froze in terror, gasping, "Is that magic?" Our main character grinned, manifesting. "A pure frost bullet," he taunted. "Is this your first time witnessing true spiritual arts?" As that glowing arrow blasted into the charging cavalry, their entire mighty formation violently, says, collapsed. Arrogant knights and warhorses were brutally thrown to the blood-soaked earth. Milvus trembled in despair, realizing this monster's aim was flawlessly targeting vital points even while moving at full speed. The spiritual energy was terrifying, but without transcendent physical mastery, such god-tier archery would be absolutely impossible. Right then, Dale's spiritual aura exploded, casting a high-tier art to summon a massive glacier, and, instantly, an insurmountable frozen fortress erupted from the earth, completely sealing off their ever-Dalzend. Escape route! The elite squad stared in soul-crushing disbelief, while the ruthless Dale roared, "Crush them all! Annihilate the enemy forces!" His loyal demonic cultivators roared back, answering their master's call. But just as their ruthless blades were about to strike, "Young master," they swore to shield him with their mortal lives. Seconds later, they initiated a blood-soaked clash against their foes. Meanwhile, Milvus gripped his skull in despair, realizing the deadly illusion. The enemy's true target was never his vanguard unit, but utter isolation. To worsen this catastrophe, Lord Philip executed a foolishly suicidal maneuver. Philip froze as his loyal cultivators were mercilessly decapitated. Thanks to his arrogance, the central vanguard stupidly exposed the right flank, leaving their once impenetrable battle arrays totally shattered. Roaring with blazing fury, he spat vile curses. Was this truly his final inescapable doom? Yet before he could process his impending slaughter, Philip suddenly unleashed a primal war cry, desperately slashing to shatter the absolute zero barrier and binding array. Gripping his spiritual blade, he roared for vengeance. Lord Dale, he vowed, would definitely fall today. Yet Dale simply smirked at this pathetic display. An instant later, Milvus was violently forced to his knees, while Dale glared downward like a god. Clearly, someone had foolishly overestimated these so-called Aura Knights. The ancient martial techniques forged by St. Magdalene's holy sect had actually become their most devastating, fatal flaw. In his previous life, the very cultivator who cruelly imprisoned him was this sect's grandmaster, the Divine Blade. Through centuries of torment, Dale forcefully memorized every single sacred combat art of St. Magdalene's hypocritical holy sect under that bastard's tyranny. He literally knew their weaknesses by heart. Suddenly, his loyal shadow guard excitedly reported, "Young Master Dale, Baron Grinbelt's forces have triumphed. The left flank's mighty commander, Baron Parker, was successfully captured." Milvus boiled with furious resentment. This entire catastrophic failure was caused by that brainless Philip. Stepping closer, Dale mocked that Philip clearly treated his vanguard like disposable pawns. Milvus spat back, "What nonsense. He masterminded this illusion specifically to lure us into a death trap." Dale flashed a demonic grin. The chaotic battlefield is a slaughterhouse where destinies shift in a single breath. Amidst this bloody, endless carnage, those who seal their own doomed fates can only curse their profound incompetence. Mocking the Grand Empire's pathetic traditions, Dale generously offered a chance for survival to any cultivator willing to beg for mercy using mere spirit stones. "So, will you insects grovel for life?" Instantly, an arrogant enemy elite furiously roared. "What a joke! We would gladly embrace death over submitting to you," Dale snapped, his fingers with a chilling smirk. "Really?" Condensing his dark aura, he instantly impaled the defiant elite, granting his foolish wish for death. The man released a blood-curdling, agonizing shriek before collapsing. Dale then locked eyes with Milvus. "And what about you?" Milvus stared blankly at the blood-soaked earth. Suddenly, his remaining loyal subordinates were absolutely paralyzed with shock as their proud commander knelt before Dale. Milvus did not fear death, but this was the only way to shield his sect from utter annihilation. Desperately, he commanded his surviving cultivators to kneel immediately. They were cowardly invoking the Empire's sacred survival traditions, fully surrendering while pleading for the honorable, standard treatment of defeated prisoners. Dale stared down at the groveling commander in absolute silence. So, you proud elites are actually willing to grovel for mercy? In that case, I will keep this execution brief. Absolutely not. Milvis's eyes widened in total horror, gazing up in pure desperation. With a ruthless smirk, Dale declared that none of these hypocrites would survive today. Without hesitation, he commanded his shadows to slaughter everyone. Even his own battle-hardened cultivators gasped in sheer terror at this brutally merciless decree. Imperial laws demanded ransom, but this ruthless massacre just awakened an unimaginable nightmare. The ransom meant nothing. Dale's aura was absolute ice. In mere breaths, all the elite guards were completely obliterated, leaving only Milvis standing. For these shadow cultivators, only his absolute command mattered. One single man carried the ultimate blame for this absolute massacre. Milvis exploded with blazing fury, screaming that Dale was just a pathetic piece of trash. Did this arrogant fool think he would just bow down? Instantly, he ignited his blade's aura and charged. But in a single heartbeat, cold steel mercilessly pierced his cultivation core. He crashed hard into the dirt, drowning in a pathetic pool of his own blood. As Dale's shadow fell over him, he whispered, "Do you remember dying?" Milvis froze, pure terror paralyzing his soul. Dale hissed into his ear, revealing that he remembered that bloody night perfectly, especially his grinning face. He was watching from the shadows. When the traitorous master drove a blade through his back, Milvis had just smiled. So now, he demands, an answer. Pathetic night. Do you remember my death? Milvis shrieked in absolute Bedic, soul-crushing horror, screaming that this defied the heavens. Had this vengeful ghost truly crawled back to the mortal realm? Suddenly, demonic, abyssal energy devoured his entire broken body, while Dale coldly smiled and replied, yes. Sweet, intoxicating revenge finally washed over his soul. Across the battlefield, Philip's last surviving cultivators were brutally massacred. Right in front of him, he dropped to his knees in utter despair, realizing that when the illusion of victory shattered, his entire world collapsed. The heavy cavalry on the right flank was completely annihilated. Milvis and the Aura Master were dead. The left formation had also completely crumbled to dust, leaving his remaining troops helplessly trapped by Dale's overwhelming demonic vanguard. Dale's terrifying, bloodthirsty grin haunted his mind. Gripping his hair, he wildly questioned why that deathly stare wouldn't fade. Suddenly, a panicked guard broke his trance, screaming, "Young Master Philip, we need your command, right now." But Philip, completely broken, just kept tearing at his own hair, frantically muttering that his noble bloodline couldn't fall like this. The exhausted warriors stared at their pathetic leader in total disbelief, questioning his insane mumbling. He violently shrieked at them to hold their ground. Their prestigious martial sect would absolutely never bow to trash. The bloody cultivator yelled back that fighting this immortal monster meant certain death for everyone. Philip snapped, daring a lowly dog to question his authority. They must march straight into the jaws of hell. Suddenly, another blood-soaked disciple desperately sprinted toward him and screamed in terror. Philip practically wet himself, screeching for his meat shields to block the attack. If he knew this grand conquest would become his personal graveyard, he would have drowned in sweet wine, buried his face in his beautiful concubines, and peacefully faded away in his luxurious silk sheets, rather than on this cursed soil. He pathetically shielded his trembling face. Meanwhile, Dale's elite cultivators roared with pure, bloodthirsty triumph. Everything fell into place. Flawlessly, my dark lord. We expect nothing less from the brilliant, peerless Master Dale. The arrogant Philip was dragged over in chains, violently screaming to be released at once. Dale coldly chuckled, noting this spoiled brat really didn't know when to accept death. Philip was now forced onto his bloody knees, cursing Dale to choke on his filthy victory. He sneered he might have won this battle, but not the immortal war. Dale coldly replied that those were rather bold threats coming from a pathetic, trembling coward who just tried to abandon his entire sect. Philip shamelessly barked back that his noble life was infinitely more valuable, so naturally, he must survive to lead. Dale's killing intent flared as he smirked. Is that so? Since Philip's little war game was completely over, there was absolutely zero reason to keep him breathing. Instantly, Philip threw his trembling hands up in absolute, gut-wrenching panic, screaming for him to stop. Then, howled, "Fine, I accept your death duel." He would bet his soul on the outcome of. A deadly duel commenced. Watching this, Bale scoffed. Utterly ridiculous. Our main character stayed completely chill. Fine, he smirked. Challenge accepted. Philip flashed a toxic grin, jumping up and screaming that the trap was perfectly set. Internally, Philip was laughing like a maniac. He knew this fool would fall for it. Die, you arrogant trash. Philip slashed his blade, pouring his killing intent. But Dale didn't flinch. He just unleashed a blast of spiritual energy. Philip stumbled backward violently. He was totally stunned, unable to process this overpowered counterattack, crashing hard onto the blank dirt. The treacherous noble rolled around like a dog, screaming out for absolute mercy. He pathetically begged for his life. Dale glared down in pure disgust. You really plan to act like trash until your dying breath? Just like that, the hyped-up crusade ended with a cowardly whimper. Days later, our main character was welcomed back at the royal palace with explosive cheers. The crowd chanted that the young lord had returned a legend. Rumors spread like wildfire about how he utterly crushed the enemy lines, showing zero mercy to the elite. Knights of St. Magdalene. The slaughter was absolute, yet Dale felt completely awkward under this heavy spotlight. Lurking near the docks, a shadowed figure asked the crowd, "Why celebrate a massacre? A literal ocean of bloodstains this. Holy battlefield. Did the heavens truly desire such slaughter? Today, this demon child's sword slaughters our rivals, but tomorrow, he might just butcher his own allies." This poison came from Cardinal Nikolai of the Life Goddess Church. Planting seeds of betrayal with a twisted smirk, he manipulated the masses. Arriving at his ancestral estate, Dale stepped inside to a warm family welcome. Sister Liz sprinted over, screaming in pure delight. He caught her, asking if she missed her big brother. She nodded intensely, squeezing him tight. Then, Uncle Helmut stepped up, proudly praising his dominant victory in his debut bloodbath. Smiling humbly, the young master thanked his uncle, then walked over to greet his waiting parents. Charlotte and Sepia watched the wholesome reunion from the sidelines, beaming with pride. Stopping before his parents, Dale offered a respectful bow, announcing, "Dale of the Saxe bloodline officially reports that the enemy forces have been entirely eradicated." Hand over his martial heart, he dropped to one knee to deliver Armen Altida the triumphant news. Noir beamed, declaring his son had achieved legendary greatness, leading their vanguard to ultimate victory. Dale humbly replied that this win was only achieved through the unbreakable Saxe blade. Turning to Serville, he gave deep thanks for his brutal combat training. Mother Elena smiled warmly, noting his drained aura after such intense battles. He needed to cultivate and recover. Dale thanked her, a genuine smile lighting up his tired face. Months on the bloody front lines finally faded, and the peaceful warmth of home healed his soul. Meanwhile, Lord Brandenburg erupted in volcanic rage over the plan. Devastating intel. Glaring at his crippled surviving grunts, he roared, demanding to know where Philip was. Why did only 2 useless worms survive? Trembling, one gasped that the entire Sacred Order of St. Magdalene, including the elite Milvas and the legendary Aura Knights, had been wiped from existence. How Saxe had taken young Master Philip hostage, along with his remaining inner circle. Now, they were extorting them for a massive ransom. Brandenburg's face twisted in psychotic realization. His elite forces were totally crushed, fleeing to save their skins. He unleashed a terrifying scream, but lurking in the shadows, he asked coldly, "Do you know the fate of traitors?" The men, choking on tears, screamed that this was a trap, begging for their miserable lives. Brandenburg roared at the guards to toss them into the abyss. He swore to make them pray for death. The captives shrieked for the count to halt, but his heart was ice. Rumors of this brutal slaughter spread like wildfire, marking a legendary shift between the light and shadow factions. Dale, having slaughtered his foes without a shred of pity, was crowned the new Dark Lord. As his 11th birthday arrived, he stepped into his father's study. Noir declared that since he was now 11, a grand reward awaited. At the upcoming banquet, he would officially crown him Viscount of the Saxes Duchy. The young master was utterly stunned. This prestigious title granted immense power, allowing him to rule as the Lord's true proxy. By doing this, his father was treating him as an absolute equal to the family head. Bowing, Dale thanked his father for this heavy burden, adding that he wished to use his newfound power to act as the Lord's proxy immediately. Noir raised a brow, asking, "What is your scheme?" Dale explained that his title of Dark Lord painted him as a merciless butcher, killing prisoners and slaughtering righteous knights guided by the heavens. The Holy Church would surely seek revenge. To prevent this, he must go on a sacred pilgrimage to Zestina. He claimed he wanted to cleanse his sins. Noir pondered this, then chuckled, admitting he was totally baffled. Fear is a supreme weapon, a cultivator's greatest shield, yet Dale wanted to trade it for divine approval? Dale smirked, declaring the church's favor held hidden value. Noir suspiciously asked what game he was playing. Dale vowed he was forging a deal the heavens couldn't reject. In reality, Dale knew this holy trip would unlock forbidden immortal grimoires. Just nights before this meeting, a terrifying vision had haunted his sleep. In a nightmare, an eerie voice whispered, "Do you remember? Do you recall your past death?" A rotting skeleton gripped his soul. Dale gritted his teeth, remembering it all. The phantom commanded him to embrace his demise, piercing his spiritual core. Gasping for air, he jolted awake, clutching his pounding heart. He knew this dark vision was born from his mental abyss. It was a demonic trial within his inner realm, awakened when he forged his third spiritual circle. For an immortal cultivator, conquering the mind realm is absolute law. Yet, his soul was chained by isolation and lingering ghosts of vengeance. It was a pathetic weakness. He lacked the true realm of mastery. To dominate his spiritual abyss, he desperately needed overwhelming power. Like a legendary blade to a warrior, forbidden tomes fuel a mage's ascent. Soon, a brilliant morning broke the darkness. Near the fractured border of Baron Grinbelt's domain, the very blood-soaked earth where light and shadow recently clashed, lay Baron Parker's lands. This dangerous zone marked the dead end of the north and the gateway to the Central Empire, a realm completely closed off to the mighty Duke of Saxes. Parker, stripped of honor after Dale crushed him, had only one vile path left to survive: ruthless banditry. Standing with his rebel scum, he roared, "Fire!" Deadly arrows rained upon Dale's convoy. As the Royal Knights blocked the lethal strike, the rebels sneered, asking how they dared invade Parker's domain without bowing for safe passage. What were they seeking? But Dale's knights just smiled a demonic grin. The corrupt guards sneered aggressively. Paying tribute is heavenly law when a mortal steps into an esteemed nobleman's domain. Inside the carriage, Dale cultivated silently, musing, "What pitiful ants." Stepping into the mortal dust, he coldly announced, "If tribute is required, I have prepared sufficient spirit stones for passage." As the greedy knights unsealed the pouch, blinding wealth widened their pathetic eyes to the absolute limit. Feigning mercy, the corrupt captain smirked. "Your offering is acceptable. The heavens show favor. So open the gates." The carriage rolled forward, while the treacherous guards exchanged sinister, bloodthirsty grins. Their journey barely resumed before a violent surge of killing intent erupted from the shadows. Another squadron of rogue cultivators blocked their path, roaring that this sacred path belonged to Baron Parker. They demanded ultimate reverence to their master. How dare mere mortals trespass without bleeding their wealth? Dale's piercing gaze locked onto the ambush, questioning, "Tribute. We just paid your lowly martial brothers. Do the Empire's heavenly laws permit extorting travelers twice for one path?" The vicious bandit barked. "Paid? What arrogant delusion is this? I have never seen your miserable faces. We uphold the Empire's absolute authority. If you wish to preserve your pathetic cultivation, surrender every spatial ring you possess." The dark underworld's unspoken rule of absolute betrayal and shadowed justice reigned supreme here. Baron Parker's absolute martial law dictated everything. He was glorified as a peerless war hero. Suddenly, Dale chuckled, unleashing a terrifying spiritual pressure that completely paralyzed the corrupt soldiers. Ripping off his concealing mortal hood, he sneered, "A so-called hero? My memories of his past betrayals tell a very different story." The rogue captain's face drained of color, screaming in absolute, unadulterated terror at the impossible sight. "It is young Master Dale," he roared, commanding his trembling subordinates. "Hold your formations. It is only 2 cultivators. We can slaughter them both." Dozens of armored betrayers swarmed the ridge, launching a cowardly multi-directional killing array. Poison-tipped arrows locked onto Dale's vital points. Stepping forward, the loyal retainer Bale declared his complete readiness. "Awaiting your divine command, young master." Dale's eyes flashed with absolute disdain. "End this pathetic mortal game. Eradicate every single piece of trash." Instantly, the desperate snipers unleashed a deadly volley of arrows, hoping for a swift execution. Unfazed, Dale stood like an immortal mountain, trusting Bale to utterly obliterate the incoming threat. Unleashing his suffocating martial aura, Bale bowed. "Your will is absolute, Master." The traitors watched in sheer despair as their ultimate attacks crumbled into dust. Moving like lightning, Bale instantly materialized behind the vanguard, ruthlessly shattering his cultivation base. Bursting with legendary power, he decimated the remaining ranks while agonizing screams of absolute despair filled the valley. The corrupted commander violently trembled, witnessing his entire sect annihilated. Collapsing before Dale's feet, the broken traitor wailed, "Supreme Young Master, please grant this. Lowly Aunt Mercy, I swear eternal blood oath servitude to your divine self forever." Shaking uncontrollably, he offered a spatial pouch of treasures, desperately invoking the sacred goddess's holy name for salvation. Dale offered a chilling, demonic smile. Why would a supreme being spare worthless betrayers? He had crushed countless hypocritical cultivators during his central continent conquests. Fast forward through weeks of relentless travel, destiny finally brought them to their ultimate battleground. Emerging from the mists, the awe-inspiring heavenly domain of the papal state Justina materialized before them. Gliding silently across the spiritual waters in a modest wooden vessel, Bale firmly announced, "We have breached Puzel, the capital of the Holy See." Dale surveyed the hypocritical Holy Land, sneering, "City of the Holy See? What absolute garbage." He appeared as a humble pilgrim, but hiding in the shadows, a divine executioner had finally arrived. Approaching the grand sect gates, his eyes burned with unwavering resolve. He stood tall, demanding entry. Stepping inside the Elders' Hall, he faced His Eminence, Cardinal Nikolai. A fake smile masked Dale's true intentions. This was a Circle 6 white core mage, standing at the absolute peak. Nikolai sneered, noting the massive blood tribute paid on the recent battlefield. He mocked the young Master Dale for the tragic slaughter of their holy knights. Such devastating losses for the St. Magdalene sect. Truly heartbreaking news. Dale played along, expressing deep sorrow over this fateful clash of light and dark. He claimed this bitter war was a crucial turning point for the entire realm. Blaming his own youthful ignorance, he lamented the mountain of fallen warriors. To cleanse his karma and suppress his dark energy, he sought absolute purification. This pilgrimage was his penance. Dale scrutinized the elder's shifting expression. He prayed aloud that the cardinal shared his righteous path of inner redemption. Nikolai secretly evaluated this heir of House Saxes, a legendary prodigy born of darkness. Son of the Black Tower Master, rumored to possess a heaven-defying talent. Did the stench of death finally shatter this boy's arrogant Tao heart? Despite his monstrous spiritual roots, he was still just a naive 11-year-old kid. This situation was playing out perfectly for the corrupt church. The goddess grants absolute mercy to all cultivators. Young Master, Nikolai preached smoothly. No demonic karma in this mortal realm is completely beyond divine salvation. Dale grabbed his chest, burying his seething aura in absolute terrifying silence. Then, his voice turned ice cold. "No sin is beyond atonement, you say?" Nikolai nodded arrogantly. "Exactly," Dale smirked. "So, what about selling out our entire empire? Is betraying our sovereign nation to the rival goddess also a forgivable crime?" Nikolai froze in absolute shock, growling that this sick joke crossed the line. Dale ruthlessly exposed the dark truth behind the Holy State's recent downfall. 12 corrupt elders plotted to surrender their sacred land to the imperial forces. His so-called eminence was one of the prime traitors in that filthy scheme. When the Supreme Patriarch refused to kneel, he was brutally assassinated in secret, slaughtered by a treacherous alliance between corrupt cardinals and imperial lapdogs. "Has the heavens truly forgiven you for auctioning off our homeland, Your Eminence?" Nikolai erupted with killing intent, roaring that this brat was speaking absolute demonic heresy. "You beg for spiritual cleansing, yet dare to spit such venomous lies in my domain?" Blinding holy aura exploded from his core as he screamed in unbridled fury. "Does a demon like you actually believe the divine heavens will show mercy?" Dale laughed coldly. "Do you think assassinating a mere Duke's envoy changes destiny? The Duke won't expose your pathetic sect's hidden crimes. That is your desire. So, consider this supreme blackmail the exact price to buy our absolute silence." It was a brilliant bluff. Duke Noir was completely oblivious to this ruthless manipulation. Nikolai's spiritual pressure peaked, his face twisting in rage before deadly silence fell. Heavy tension suffocated the room until the defeated cardinal finally surrendered to him. Dale grinned wickedly, bringing up the legendary Forbidden Archive hidden deep underground. The ultimate secret vault where the Holy Order sealed away ancient, cursed demonic manuals. This arrogant demand sent shockwaves through Nikolai's mind. Dale wanted unrestricted, supreme access, but as the Elder hesitated, a terrifying ancient presence awakened from the shadows below. The ultimate forbidden text, the Tome of the Black Goat, lay hidden in the deepest abyss. Carrying a flickering lantern, he pondered the strict rule that only a single soul could ever step foot inside this sealed domain. Before crossing the threshold, Nikolai warned that the Holy Church claimed absolute zero responsibility for his survival. Furthermore, he was permitted to claim just a single artifact. Touching anything else meant death. He was forced to vow an absolute oath of eternal silence. Dale fiercely declared his unbreakable vow upon the legendary Duke of Noir. Nikolai enforced this sacred pact, binding their very souls. The pledge was literally locked within their beating hearts. He and the Cardinal finalized this deadly magical contract, the White Tower's masterpiece. Dale understood perfectly well that betrayal meant his heart would instantly shatter into bloody pieces. However, to him, their pathetic secret meant nothing. Approaching the colossal rusted gates, he read the ominous bloody inscription warning all trespassers to abandon every shred of hope. Eyes wide with dark anticipation, he pushed the heavy doors open anyway. Dale steeled his nerves, abandoning the useless lantern. There was a terrifying reason. They called this Purgatory Adam. This endless dungeon masqueraded as an archive, hoarding unstable mystical artifacts that once brought catastrophic ruin upon the entire world. Yet, just as a master swordsman requires a divine blade, a true cultivator demands the ultimate spellbook, despite the fatal risks. The burning ambition to claim an overpowered legacy was every sorcerer's instinct, but stepping into the shadowy depths, he instantly